Can I just start at 6, Walter? Okay. Thank you for the reminder to silence our phones. Okay, Walter, I'm starting. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Riviera Beach CRA, June 10th. The time is 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Lanier? Commissioner McCoy?
New Jersey mink.
Could someone mute their phone if there's this background noise? Thank you.
Patrick McCoy is here.
Oh, thank you.
Commissioner Miller Anderson?
Present.
Vice Chair Lawson?
Here.
Chair Botel?
Here, and did you get that Commissioner McCoy is here?
I did.
Thank you.
Also present, Scott Evans, Interim Executive Director, Michael Hago, General Counsel, Tamara Sagan, CRA Clerk.
Thank you. Could we have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner McCoy?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any, I can't see my own, additions or deletions? No, you know what? I didn't read this. I'm sorry. Let me read this first. Any member of the public wishing to comment publicly on any matter, including items on the agenda, shall submit their comments by email to RBCRA Clerk Tamara Sagan at publiccomments, plural, at rbcra.com. The email shall contain the applicable agenda item numbers along with the precise wording to be read into the record. Explicit language will not be read. Emails without applicable agenda item numbers will be read under the general public comments section. Be advised, public comments will be accepted for each applicable item and the general public comment session until closure is announced by the chairperson or the RBCRA clerk. All email addresses and submitted comments are and will be public record. The RBCRA clerk or designee will read public comments into the record at the appropriate time for no more than 3 minutes. If you have any questions, or please contact the RBCRA office at 561-844-3408 or email tseguin@rbcra.com. Thank you. And now, do we have any additions or deletions?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So could I have any disclosures by the by the RBCRA commissioners or the executive director? No. Okay. Do we have any? Would someone care to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes.
That
Do we have
motion
any-
carries.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment cards for the consent agenda?
There are no public comments.
Thank you. All matters listed under this item are considered to be routine and action will be taken by one motion. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless a council person so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Could we have someone make a motion, please, to adopt the consent agenda?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair, did you
Yes.
acknowledge Ms. Councilperson
Oh,
Lanier?
I'm sorry. No, thank you. I didn't notice. Thank you. Would you please make sure that you acknowledge the fact that Commissioner Lanier is here? Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Commissioner Lanier? think she's frozen.
Oh, yeah, I think she is.
Commissioner
Commissioner,
McCoy,
Parliamentary inquiry. What are we doing? Are we checking on Ms. Lanier or are we doing roll call? What are we?
well, let's give Ms. Lanier,
I was doing the consent agenda.
yeah, but I think he's worried about Ms. Lanier not being with us any longer, so let's give her just a minute to see if she gets back. She might be trying, she's had a lot of trouble with this, so. Well, in the essence of time, let's take the roll on consent agenda and hope that by the time we get back to the regular agenda, she'll be with us. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner McCoy,
Madam Chair?
Yeah, yes, Commissioner McCoy.
Yes.
There she is. Yay, good. She's with us twice now. Go ahead, Madam
Yes.
Clerk.
Commissioner Lanier. This is a vote for consent agenda.
Shirley, can you turn your mic on? I think she's frozen. Ah, this is a vote on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel.
Yes,
That motion carries.
thank you. Okay, regular business. Item number 4. Madam Clerk, do you want to read item number 4?
Yes. Request for the recommendation and approval of proposed changes to the commercial grant incentive program evaluation matrix.
Thank you. Does someone want to make a motion to approve item?
This is just a discussion item.
Oh, okay, you're right. I'm sorry. It looked like there was a recommendation for approval, so,
We are looking for board direction, but we want to just present it and then determine the board's
Madam
preferences
Chair,
for moving forward.
okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. McCoy?
Madam Chair, I would request if we're not taking action on it, can we deal with the action items first? Because I thought this was, so more or less, I thought this was something we expected to take action on.
Mr. Evans?
Madam
is
Chair.
this some-
Yes, we were proposing to go through the proposed matrix, outline our recommendations for making changes, and then get board comments. If you like the recommendations made by staff, then an approval, a board vote approving us to move forward with the amended matrix would be useful. What I would like to do is would like to bring it to the next meeting to approve the commercial grant program facade improvement. So we need to modify the matrix first. So I'm hopeful that the board will listen to the proposed modifications tonight, because at the next meeting, I would like to reopen the commercial grant facade improvements.
right,
Madam
so
Chair,
Ms. Lanier?
I need to ask a question. We had this discussion with the CRA director before, and it was my understanding that when we brought items to the agenda, that we would have a distinction between what was to be voted on and what was purely discussion, because I was under the impression that this was going to be up for a vote tonight. So in the future, and I've said this before, if items are for discussion and there is no vote that has to be taken by this commission, then it needs to be under a heading that's called discussion. Because if we're going to deal with discussion items first, then I should know that. If we're going to deal with them last, I should know that. But the way it's being presented as if it's just business as usual and we need to make some type of vote on this. And I said this before. This really has thrown me off, because I didn't know that this was going to be a discussion.
It seems to me that there is in the backup a resolution. So it seems to me that this is not a discussion item, but an item on which you want us to take action. So I think the best course of action might be to make a motion, have a second, have the discussion, and then vote on it, and then have any public comments. Does anyone have another opinion about that before we proceed?
but before we proceed, Madam Chair, how do we resolve this issue of looking at our agenda and seeing which items are for discussion and which items are to be taken votes on?
This
We need to
agenda
get that
item
straight.
is marked as a discussion item. So we would like to propose.
It's not on the agenda as a discussion item. It's number 4 and it has a heading. It's under regular business.
It does have a resolution attached to the backup, Mr. Evans, so it would
Yes,
seem to me that you want us to take action on it, and that if it were to have been just discussion, it would have been put at the end under discussion items. Could we proceed along those lines, and then hopefully we'll have a clearer idea at the next meeting that certain items are to be discussion only and certain are to be acted upon?
Yes, I think that what we ended up with was discussion items mixed in with action items. So we'll make sure they get separated on future agendas.
Okay, so let's go forth with making the
Madam Chair.
resolution. Ms. Miller Anderson.
Just for the record, the CRA agendas typically are not written up like the cities are. And maybe we just need to try to streamline it so that it is, because a lot of time it has always had discussion items mixed in with others.
Right.
But this particular item here, number 4, should have been written up as a resolution of the Board of Commissioners instead of being written that way, because it does have a resolution, and in the memo they're asking for approval. So I think that was just probably not typed correctly, but it does need to be set up where it has regular business, old business, discussion, and it typically, and presentations, it typically has not been set up that way. So that
I think the consensus I'm hearing from the commission is that we'd like it to be set up along the same lines that the city agendas are set up. It'll be easier for us to comprehend what's going on. But for the purposes of this evening, may I have asked somebody to make that recommendation, resolution number 2017-11?
That's a resolution that we provided as backup when the program was originally approved. So
Right,
tonight we just wanted to approve changes to the matrix to the board.
Okay, so does somebody want to
bring it back? We can bring it back at a future meeting with the resolution.
I think that we're anxious to have this put to bed, are we not, Ms. Lanier? This was something that I think you raised. Do you want to have this voted on and enacted? We can't hear you,
I mean,
Shirley.
I have no problem with voting on it. I just wanted to.
Yes.
I have no problem with it being voted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Thank
Hello?
you. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I have no problem with it being voted on. My issue is that I said this twice before, that if they're going to be discussion items, it should be in a different section. I understand that this is not the city council, but it makes it clear to us when we're reviewing the agenda of where we need to be able to be prepared to at least to have an informed conversation, because now I know I'm going to have to vote on this. This is not just bantering back and forth between council members. This is going to be an actual vote. And I said this twice. I just want to be able to move forward with this being the case at our next meeting, because I've said this before. Now, with that being said, we can go ahead with this item and we can vote on this item. I just want to make it clear that we need to be able to do that in the future.
Madam Chair.
I see Ms. Miller Anderson, yes.
I think we need to listen to the presentation like we typically do when it's written this way. And at the end, if he's saying that he wants, what are we going to vote on now? We don't even know what we're voting on.
All right, let's
There's no resolution.
We'll listen to the presentation, and somebody will hopefully make a motion that we approve the proposed changes to the commercial grant incentive program. So that being said, Mr. Evans, would you like to make the presentation?
Yes, actually, Andre Lewis, who manages our facade program, is going to present the changes to the matrix.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commission Board. I want to go through the changes to the commercial grant program scoring matrix. So a little bit of background, back in February, the board asked for us, requested that we provided recommendations to revamp the evaluation tool. The board also requested that items be removed or reworded. So there is some additions and deletions to the original scoring matrix. First one is the checklist section is required required documentation was moved to a separate sheet. The Dun and Bradstreet numbers were reviewed. Dun and Bradstreet number review were removed. The scoring section, to which offers adverse versus non-adverse, did not offer a range of scoring, so that was removed. The operational history section talks about the scoring was modified to offer a range of points based on years of operation. And we eliminated the blight scoring section, and that also was eliminated, and then we modified the scoring in that section. Also, the TIF increase section of the scoring was modified to offer a range also. On the percentage of personal investment from the business, the local preference sections scoring was also modified, not just to get an appreciation of a lump sum of points, but also to offer a range based on length of operation. The scoring section that was awarded the number of employees has been modified, and the additions made to the rate made that rates the contractor selected and certified as a minority business, and a percentage of the project awarded to that contractor. An addition was made that rates the level of improvements that adds to the safety perception and the safety environment. So we'll go through those. So the first one, the completed lien search and financial obligation to the city. So if a submitter has less than 500 in lien obligation to the city, they get a maximum of 10 points. Between 500 and 2,500, they get 5 points. And if it's greater than $2,500, they get 0 points.
Excuse me, let me ask a question about that.
Sure.
So you're saying if a business owes the city money, we're going to give them points versus how much money they owe the city?
If they owe less than $500, which would be considered a small amount or a small lien, then we...
Well, in terms of a business owing the city money, we're going to give money to somebody who owes us money?
Well, that's the rate of scoring. So if we want to say 0, if the business owes us $1 and you want it to the points to be 0, then we can change that to 0.
Well, we need to look at that, because I don't see where it is even feasible for us to give money to somebody who owes us money.
Madam Chair?
Yes, good. Are you done, Ms. Lanier?
Yes. I mean, explain it to me, because I'm not understanding that.
Well, there could be different situations. There could be a little bit on, something on site. There could be a citation, anything of nominal or an extreme amount. So I try to put a point scoring range. But if we want to remove that and say if they have any liens, then they go 0 points, we can do that.
The other alternative for the board.
I'm not finished. I just want to. You said about liens, but give me other examples of what this means.
For example, it could be a code enforcement lien, but I'll just add one of the things that we could do with this matrix is if you have any liens whatsoever, that could disqualify you from applying for the grant. So if the board wants to take a stronger position rather than trying to give a range of points, you could just decide that anyone who has any liens is not eligible to apply. That's another option.
So, and the only thing I want to say, and I'll be through with that because I know we got to get through this. The only thing I'm saying, so what if we give them the money? What is the incentive for them to pay off the lien?
In this case, the best incentive we could possibly do was to deny them the ability to apply if they have any liens whatsoever.
let's get a consensus on that. That makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you, Ms. Lanier?
Yeah, it makes sense that, yeah,
Mr.
No.
Lawson? Mr. Lawson wanted to speak, and then let's hear from Mr. McCoy. And
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought the amounts and the scoring was sufficient for the grant program, because if they're applying for this grant program for beautification of the business, they may not have the ability or financial ability to be able to pay for or cover that amount of the liens. If we wanted to implement possibly some type of payment arrangement or an option for them, but I don't think we should eliminate them from having the opportunity of receiving a grant for beautification and work to their business because they have a city lien attached to it. As a business owner, I wouldn't want to be not available to receive a grant if I owed the city $500. And I understand that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry that you're done.
and Madam Chair.
Ms. Lanier,
If I could,
I just want to let him finish. Thank you.
Okay,
and if the individual or the business has the opportunity to set up some type of arrangement or have an arrangement in place, that is an option for us, but I wouldn't want to eliminate them as an opportunity to receive the grant funding due to the lien being outstanding to the city.
Okay, let's hear from Mr. McCoy, and then I'll get back to you, Ms. Lanier. Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Evans, Mr. Lewis, before I get to you to ask this question, because I already know the answer to it, members, I just want to kind of concern you with just this. So if we have an issue where there's a business that has any kind of code enforcement violations, on the homeowner side, we're offering homeowners, if you have code violations, that you can come in and you'll be eligible for a beautification improvements to your property. And I think certainly I understand your sentiments, Councilwoman Lanier from the 3rd District, but I don't want to give something to homeowners that I don't want to give to businesses. And you're going to find a situation where you got that business that's actually located inside of a plaza that is probably being cited by the city, the plaza, and the home or the specific business may be disadvantaged because of something that may exist down on the opposite end of the plaza. And I just don't think that that's a good idea. Now, if we're doing specific, like something, to the nature of like signage under the commercial grant program, I don't know how one business inside of a retail plaza then should be penalized because of some coding violations that the property owner has on the other end of the plaza, or even in terms of landscaping. So I would just caution us to take it from that perspective, because I understand your intentions, but I don't want to really exclude somebody that's just a tenant and they don't specifically have any code violations when they submit this application. That was my first concern regarding this, Madam Chair.
Ms. Lanier, did you want to comment further? Or?
yeah, I wanted to say that if that is the case, if people have liens and code enforcement issues, then there should be a program for that. Just as there a program for homeowners. The commercial grant program should not be to pay off code enforcement and for liens. If that is the case, then, and if you want people to be,
That's not the situation.
well, if they get the money, they're gonna pay it off.
No, if they get the money, they're going to improve their property to satisfy.
But they're gonna have
Okay,
to pay
we
for
have
it at
one
some
person.
point. Let me finish. They're gonna have to pay for this lien or this code enforcement at some point. So if they're going to do that, then who says that they're not going to use this money to do it with?
Well,
I'm just saying, hold on, let me finish. I'm just saying that to compare this to homeowners is apples and oranges, because that is those are two different types of programs. All I'm saying is that they still not be eligible for this commercial grant program if they owe the city money, period. Now, we can take a vote on it. You can outvote me. We can do however it goes, but it does not make any sense to me to give money to a business that owe us money.
Can she clarify what she means as the business? Because you're talking about two different things. We have a number, and I mean, surely everybody has it in their district, but there are retail plazas and then there's individual property owners that may want to apply for a facade improvement for signage. So clarify, Councilwoman Lanier, what you're referring to.
Whoever is applying for this grant is a business owner. That means that if you have on this list complete lien search and financial obligations to the city, that means that whoever is applying for this, you're looking to see if they have liens or financial obligations to the city. And you're telling me that if they do, we're going to still give them money to do what they need to do while still owing us money.
I don't think that's the way it works, Councilwoman.
How does it work?
Well, let me explain something. When they do a lien search, it's not for the business, it's for the property. So if you're just renting one space in unit A, you have nothing to do with the units C, D, F, and G, or the common area that's owned by a common landlord. So
And,
I mean,
and let me finish. And I understand that. I do.
Let me finish.
Because I was trying to get my point across, and then you can go. All I'm saying is that I'm not for, you could be for it, but I'm not for giving funding to an agency, to a business that already owes the city money. Now, you can go.
That's not what we're doing.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Shirley, Councilwoman Lanier, let me explain something to you.
No, don't, please, don't explain. You have your opinion about how this
you're not
works.
understanding.
No, I am understanding, Councilman. I understand that when you're a business and you owe the city money, you can still apply, get this grant, and still owe the city money. They're just saying that we're going to give you points based on the amount of money that you owe us.
Okay.
Ms. Lanier and Mr. McCoy,
Let's just move past that. But that is my take on
I'm
this
not about to move
particular
forward
piece.
because what she's not understanding, when you do a lien search,
You can't make me understand, Mr. McCoy.
Mr.
I hope
McCoy,
I
I'm
can.
telling you.
wait,
If you don't,
wait, time out. Could I get an
No,
answer
I'm
from
not-
either
I'm not-
Mr.
I'm
Lewis,
not going to.
either Mr. Lewis
out.
or Mr. Evans
a lien search,
to
no,
clarify?
I'm not going to time out, Madam Chair,
All right.
because
I
clearly
just
what
want-
is missing, and they didn't explain it, a lien search is done on the property.
I know what a
separate.
lien search is.
Excuse me. Can I finish?
Please
If not,
finish,
then I'll
Mr.
just.
No, Mr. McCoy, please finish, and then I have a
A
question.
lien search is done on a property, which is separate and completely independent of whatever businesses that may be operating on that property. I've seen this a dozen times. I went to renew a business tax receipt and I got pushback because the commercial property tenant did not renew their business tax receipt, which is completely unrelated to me as a business. Mine is renewed every year. County tax receipt is also renewed, but I have absolutely nothing to do with the violations that may occur in the common area. But that in itself should not prevent me, if I chose to apply for facade improvement to do signage, to have anything to do with the property owner. That's two separate things. When you do a lien search, you actually go down to the clerk of courts, and one of the factors or one of the actual specific criteria they search for is the PCN, property control number, which in many cases, as in Riviera Beach, that property control number contains 10, sometimes 8, however many different businesses that's within that plaza. But one person by no means should be able to be limited because of something that's occurring at a separate business or at the common area.
Okay,
Madam
I think, thank you, Mr. McCoy. Thank you, Ms. Lanier. I think we
Madam Chair,
understand.
I just want to say one thing, and I'll be done with this. The
Okay.
CRA providing financial support to businesses who cannot operate in compliance with local laws and codes of the city. If they cannot comply with the local laws and the codes of the city, then why are we giving them money? And I'll be done with this.
Thank you. I would like somebody to make a motion that we either accept the way this is written or have Mr. Evans change it such that people who owe, whether they're in a complex or whatever, people who owe money to the city cannot apply. Can somebody please make that motion so we can be done with this and vote on it?
I'd like to make a motion. Go ahead, Mr. McCoy.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that lien searches are done specifically to the business that applies.
Okay. Does anyone want to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lanier,
No.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel.
Yes,
That motion carries with Commissioner Lanier dissenting.
thank you. Could we continue with the presentation?
Yes. So going to the next one, police record search. So if there's evidence of a previous, current criminal enterprise operating out of the business, if we find evidence, if there's no evidence found, they will be given 20 points. If there is some sort of evidence found of some sort of criminal enterprise or previous police records of evidence of some sort of criminal activity operating in the business, then they wouldn't get any points for that. And we would make note of that.
A question.
Yes.
Yes,
Can you speak
Mr.
to how
McCoy?
we come about this? Because that's very vague and is very subjective. And I would hope evidence kind of would lead to some sort of conviction, but this presumes a whole lot when you say evidence. Because
Okay. Well, when we're saying evidence here, I'm specifically speaking to. I do a police record search from the police department, and when I give them the address. Now, for example, you use the example of a plaza. If someone was fighting in the plaza or committed a robbery in the plaza, that would not be tied to the specific business. But if there was a business that is a salon, but it has been raided several times because there's suspicion of drug activity, and there was someone charged with a crime in the business or related to the business. That's tied to that person specifically, but not just the property.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Lanier.
First of all, this is too vague. Second of all, if you find that there's evidence of a criminal enterprise, you're just going to give them 0 points. You're not going to disqualify them?
Well, this is a rating scale. And again, if you want this as a automatic disqualification, yes.
If you find evidence of a previous or a criminal, of a crime, of a business that applied for a loan, you automatically would disqualify them. Why would you just give them 0 points? So we're funding crime now?
If I could just add, so when we do our police record search, a lot of times there's a long list of items. And most of the time, those items are not related to the business owner. It might be something that happened from a customer or something happened from the public outside their business. But occasionally, there's a number of records that will come back that the business may have been operating outside its approved business hours, or they may have had some sort of incidents at their business related to the operation of their business. Obviously, this is just a grant program, so we can't get involved into investigating that. But we get the police record search back. It either has items that are directly related to the business on it or not. If you would like, we can remove this category altogether. But it did help us identify businesses that may be having ongoing issues. So we can't really, I wouldn't propose to go into greater detail into this. If the board was uncomfortable with this category, we can remove it altogether.
Yeah, the thing about it, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, the thing about it is that when you have properties with chronic nuisance properties or open drug sales, of course they should not even be allowed to apply for the grant. But the way this is written, the way this looks is saying that if we do find evidence of a criminal enterprise operating out of your business, we're just going to give you 0 points for that. That's
Right,
the way it looks.
That's exactly the way it looks. Anybody else want to comment on this? Mr. McCoy. Mr. McCoy.
thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, I completely disagree. Are we not remembering the presumption of innocence that everybody has until there's a conviction? Now, if you tell me that there was a determination or adjudication of guilt or some sort of culpability by a business, then I'm okay with that. But somebody just merely coming in and discovering evidence, which may amount to nothing, I don't think that this is a good slope. In fact, it's quite illegal because unless somebody has been convicted, there is still the presumption of innocence that's owed to everybody. Merely collecting evidence doesn't mean absolutely anything. I mean, and my question is, where did we come from with this? Like, accordingly, you guys must have used this as some model and not out of the air, but
Yes,
Yes, I
this,
can provide some
this
background on that.
establishing evidence
previous,
in
this,
itself makes somebody ineligible. That doesn't make sense to me, sir. This is America, where you have the right to be found guilty, not just evidence, because evidence is done by a police department or an investigative agency. Until you have an adjudication of guilt or a guilt by some jury, that this just sounds absolutely. First of all, I can tell you, is the attorney can opine on this?
Madam Chair, this just needs to be taken out because, you know, when you say evidence, that means that now you're saying that the CRA is in the business of trying to find out, you know, and use evidence or say this is evidence. It's just too vague and it's just too much to put on the CRA to be an investigator to figure out, you know, if you have a business that is a public nuisance and open air drug sales, okay, I can see that. But then there could be other smaller items. You just don't want to get into this subjectiveness of what is considered a crime and what is not. But if you do find evidence, you're just saying that we found something. We found out that you sell drugs out the back, so we're just gonna give you 0 points.
All right, Ms. Miller
Madam
Anderson.
Chair, sounds like.
I would agree. I just think the language is poor. I think what it should say is conviction of a previous or current criminal enterprise operating out of the business.
Okay, Ms. Miller
Okay.
Anderson.
All right, so Mr. Haygood, do they not go over this stuff with you? I think I mentioned this in the last meeting.
I have not seen this.
These items that come on this agenda has to go through legal, just like they do in the city, all of the finance, whoever needs to sign off on these items so that all of this is clear and it can be presented and someone can intelligently answer these questions. I'm going to propose, because I'm sure this is just the beginning of these issues as we start getting into the rate of the community impact, how much it, the impact of the project on existing future environmental conditions. I just see us getting ready to have the same conversation in every section. So, I would like to propose that we not meet on this tonight, put it on the next one. I know we want to move forward, but we have too many questions, and I would suggest that we all meet individually with Mr. Andre and Mr. Evans and Mr. Haygood, so that all of these things can be fixed, things such as this. I mean, this is not something we should have to correct and figure out if it's legal or not legal. All of that should have been taken care of before it came to the meeting. So,
I second that, Madam Chair.
okay.
It sounds like we have an agreement. Mr. McCoy, anything you want to add to that?
Just said second, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and we should just
Because you
table
know
this.
what? I got a lot. You don't know how many times I called the police department at my specific place of business, and I can only give them my address because that's all I have. And it's usually people that just come, and God knows what happens after that. And I mean, literally, I had a really scary event last week, so we need to tighten up this language before we have any further deliberation on this.
So do we need to make a motion to table this?
Yes, I make a motion that we table this item until we can get it looked at.
There's a motion already on the floor.
Did you make a motion?
I was trying, and he seconded it. Remember, Mr. McCoy seconded, I think, right?
No, he just said that he agreed with what you said, but you can make an official.
No. He said
Mr. Lawson seconded it.
Madam Clerk, just call the roll and we'll be done with this, please.
But no, let's be clear on what it is. Is
Yes,
Tamara
exactly.
clear on what it is?
Yeah.
We're gonna table it and bring it back clearer.
After individual commission people have an opportunity to discuss it individually with Mr. Evans and Mr. Lewis, and if need be.
And Mr. Haygood.
No, hey, good, you are part of it.
Okay.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel,
Yes.
that motion carries.
Now, item number 5 is listed as a request for the approval of policies. Is this again an item, Mr. Evans, that you're looking for us to make a motion on when we're finished with our discussion?
Yes, it's listed correctly. We're requesting the board to approve update to the policies and procedures for the event center.
Okay. Would someone care to make a motion and we can have a second and then discussion? Or would you prefer to have the discussion first? I see Ms. Miller Anderson shaking her head at me.
Because of the way that it is written, I prefer, it's written very much like a discussion.
I know, that's why okay, so.
Yeah, only if it starts out as saying a resolution of the board is the only time we should be making a motion at the beginning. It needs to be written correctly in the future.
All right, let's have the presentation and then somebody can make a motion. Mr. Evans.
Did she read it?
But if it's not the city minutes of us to dispose of this, do we need to waste the time of going through this? I think more importantly, it might be worth saying what we want to see.
We're not disposing it, are we?
No.
No.
So we want to hear the presentation first, is that?
Yes.
That's how we have been doing it.
As Commissioner Miller Anderson indicates, that's why I asked at the beginning, this is not written necessarily as if it were to be a resolution. So it's a little confusing whether it's a discussion item. It is, CRA staff is looking for us to make a resolution, to make a motion on it, but because it's not written that way, we're going to hear the presentation first, and then if a motion can be made at the end of the presentation, it'll be done so. So if we could have the item number read.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, before you go forward, so this has no resolution tied to it?
So many of the CRA minor actions that we've done in the past have always been by board vote. So what I'm hearing is that you would like all actions to be resolutions in the future, that you don't want to have board vote without a resolution any longer.
Right. That's what it sounds like to me.
Wait, say that again.
So many times in the past, for minor items, we rely on a board vote at the meeting to make a determination of approval or denial. And what I'm hearing from the board is they would like a formal resolution to accompany every action so that it's very clear for every agenda item, small or large.
Yes. If you're looking for us to make some motion on something, then it should be stated that way on the agenda. Yes. Okay, so could we read item number 5, please?
Request for the approval of policies and operating parameters for the Riviera Beach Marina Event Center.
Mr. Evans, who's going to make this presentation?
Yes, the event center manager, Keandra, she will be presenting for us, and she has a presentation. I think we can activate her screen. So Keandra Knighton's been with us for several years now, and she's prepared these lists of changes to our policies and procedures. Over time, as we manage and run the event center, we make note of different things that would help us improve our operations. And so this
Madam
is a
Chair,
presentation on different items.
Madam Chair, before they get started, I have two questions. First of all, were these reviewed by the CRA's legal department? And second of all, was this reviewed with the city itself, given that the city is a major patron to this marina?
We have not sent this to the city. If that's the board direction, if you want us to get feedback from the city manager's office on these proposed changes, we can do that. I would say do that now in advance of presenting it to you.
It would be fair to have the city to weigh in on this, given that the city uses those that marina more so than anybody else, especially during the pandemic. There was even the conversation of us having our council meetings there just to kind of space out. So I would think that having that conversation with the city with these policy and procedures, that it was just kind of go hand in hand.
We can provide it to them and ask it for their comments and schedule at a future board meeting and bring back to you with their comments, if any.
Mr. McCoy.
So am I
Yeah, sorry.
understanding, you said the city is a major patron?
Yeah, the
And
city
we
uses,
should be able to decide what the
no,
policy,
I'm not saying that they should not be able to decide. I'm saying that to have a conversation with a major patronage, given that it's the city of Riviera Beach, given that we use the building a lot more so than any other of the public, it would just be a gesture to be able to have the city and the CRA on the same page with these policy and procedures. I'm not saying that the city has to be the one that says this is what you do and this is what you don't do. It would just be how you would work together in terms of how the building would be run.
but if I'm correct, none of these apply to the city of Riviera Beach. These apply to when we rent out the space and for specific city council member or mayor sponsored events. This is not considering the city as a patron, because if that's true, I can assure you the city is not the biggest patron of the Marina Event Center.
Well, I tell you what, the city uses it. It is being proposed as a city council meeting place for this board, and I'm sure as a CRA board as well. So yes, what harm would it do?
What harm would
Mr.
it do?
But can we just have here? Can we hear, please, from Ms. Miller
Yeah, let's-
Anderson? And then I think Mr. Lawson also was trying to get. It's hard to see with this small, but who was first? I think Miller Anderson. Go ahead.
Mr. Evans, this policy and procedures up, where did you go, Ms. Evans? Who am I talking to? Keandra? The policies and procedures update is just going through modifications that is being done for the policies and procedures, right? I mean.
Yes, now there is
Okay.
one policy that's proposed to be changed that is related to the city. Right now, they're technically only get 4 free events per year, I believe. And so
Now,
we
when
were-
you say city, you're talking about the city or the council people?
The
The
city.
actual city?
Yes.
Okay,
So that is one of the items that we would present for your feedback on. We were proposing to increase that number.
okay, and so that applies to the council, the commission as well,
No.
right?
Yeah.
It has in the past, yes, it has.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it has, and I don't know if you all were ever briefed on that, and that's why I was going to say, that is something that is in place currently for commission. We each have 4, should at least what it was agreed upon before, when it first came out, was that the council or commission would have 4 free community events. Outside of that 4, then we are supposed to pay for them ourselves. So what he's saying about the city, that would be the same in line with what the commission is doing. Now, I would think that the city would have some sort of reciprocal, some kind of interlocal agreement with the CRA where the city would not pay. I don't see the city paying to rent the space. Obviously, we would, if you have a paying customer, they would get it and want the same date or something, that perhaps they may have special preference, the patron, that the person that's actually paying. But I don't see charging the city for usage of the marina, because that, I don't recall that being a point that we really focused on a whole lot. But if we want to provide the same amount of usage, yeah, but I really don't see us putting that limitation on the city. First of all, I don't think they hold a whole lot of events, but I think there should be some kind of interlocal, or that may not be the proper word, but some kind of interagency agreement so that there is no charge. But there are limits for the council and commission.
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
and the only reason I said that was because, we have an update coming up on strategic facility planning. And I thought that it would just be, in the best interest of the CRA and the city to discuss this venue, because the city does use it, the council people do use it. So having them involved, given the fact that we're coming up on this whole strategic planning process for all of our facilities, it would be something that would be in the best interest of both parties.
Okay, Madam Miller Anderson, and then
Yeah, I don't think the city, well, we've never the CRA has never brought this over to the city for approval or involvement because the city would be just as, as a user like anyone else would be. As far as these policies and procedures, we've never, on the city side, have never weighed in on that.
Right,
Thank
and
you.
I understand that, Madam, Miss Councilwoman Miller Anderson. I understand that, but the city, you telling me that the city doesn't pay. So if the city doesn't pay for using the building, then what does that mean? I mean, how does that work? If they're not paying for using the building, they use the building a lot. We use the building a lot. We're having a conversations about strategic facility planning. How would that not be a part of it?
Because we're mostly talking about rebuilding or renovating our facilities on the city side. That should be the focus of that discussion.
Right,
And,
it is a facility.
but this is mostly under the CRA though. And then this isn't what we're going to be talking about with that meeting though. But the thing is, I think if we're going to have it continue where they're free, just if there is someone that requested who is going to pay, then they should have first preference. Yeah.
Could I suggest that this, because it looks to me like this could also be a very lengthy discussion where we get into the minutia of these policies and procedures. Could I suggest that when we meet with the staff regarding the first item that we addressed, we also take a look at this on a one-on-one so that they can understand what our thinking is with regard to these policies and procedures, because I think otherwise it might take us hours tonight to go through this whole thing. Does anybody object to that?
No.
Okay. Would someone like to make
Madam Chair, I don't have
Yes.
a problem with that, but if I don't know if everyone is meeting or have individual meetings, but we're going to have that issue on every one of them if we have not had previous meetings to kind of figure this out. Because the policies and procedures are already in place. We're just modifying it. So this isn't a brand new issue. We're not starting from scratch here. So it's just modifications. But I think we will wind up finding ourselves in this situation in every item if there has been previous meetings.
And I agree. What if we do have meetings and nothing does change?
And that should be addressed if that is what's happening, for sure. I've had that before in another situation. So I understand where you're coming from. But if it's just general questions, it has to be figured out, before. Now, if there's additional questions, that's a different story.
Okay, so what do you guys want to do?
Mr. McCoy
Madam Chair.
and then Mr. Lawson.
Madam Chair, if I could be acknowledged for my comments, I've been waiting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Lawson.
Mr. Evans, the first question that Ms. Councilwoman Lanier requested, did you answer if legal did take a look at this presentation?
I don't think that legal has looked at these particular changes. I mean, it's been on the agenda several times, but we didn't get a specific approval. Mr. Haygood?
Excuse me. To be honest, a lot of these are just management questions. They aren't necessarily legal issues. As it was stated earlier, these policies have been in place. I think the changes that they're requesting are based upon issues or management issues that have come up. So, but I have not looked at it. But again, they don't necessarily raise legal issues.
Mr. Haygood, I believe Councilwoman Miller Anderson stated before, we would like for you to review this agenda and be prepared, because we understand that it may not be legal issues, but at least to have reviewed the items so that if we do have these concerns and questions, you can address them accordingly.
Yes, sir.
In continuation with Councilwoman Lanier's points, if legal hasn't reviewed this, and my second question, Mr. Evans, is when does this revert back to the marina, revert back to the city?
We have 2 years left. In 2 years from now, the way that the marina transaction was set up, the event center will revert to management and operation by the city.
Okay, and to that point, I would be in agreement with Councilwoman Lanier that if the management is going to be reverting back to the city within the next 2 years, that we would definitely want the city's input and feedback, because normally in a typical situation, we would not send this over to the city, but as of right now, with the city taking over management within the next 2 years, I would want their input and insight. So if we could have this sent over to the city and then have legal take a look at it, that would be my recommendation.
You want to make that as a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. Well, actually, if Councilman McCoy wanted to comment first, and then we can make a motion.
Mr. McCoy?
So, Mr. Evans, thank you. So can you speak to the agreement that you currently have, the Riviera Beach CRA, to do the management and operations of the marina? Does that specifically lay out operational items such as these, or is that something that's generally delegated to you as the CRA?
So the CRA has a lease with the entity that the event center is built on land owned by the city. So the city has leased that land to the Marina Event Center, which is a LLC. And as a part of that lease, the CRA is designated as the manager of the property. And so as the manager of the property, the CRA, we're responsible for operating, managing the facility. And that transaction will change when the 7 years from the beginning of the new market tax credit arrangement changes. So at that point, then the city then becomes the operational responsibility.
Oh, well,
Go ahead.
Mr. Evans, does that lease agreement already establishes the CRA's responsibilities as it pertains to management and operation of the marina?
We have an agreement with the company so the Riviera Beach LLC rents the property from the city of Riviera Beach so that we could build the event center. And then we have an agreement with them that provides that the CRA manages that facility.
So,
There's actual management agreement.
Yes or no? So my question is there already an agreement that encompasses Riviera Beach Marina Event Center LLC and the Riviera Beach CRA's relationship when it comes to operating and leasing this property from the city?
Yes, sir.
There is an agreement.
Yes, sir.
So if there's currently an agreement, help me, Mr. Haygood, and also Mr. Scott Evans, on us sending this back to the city. Would this be a modification? Would this be something as a supplement or even an addendum to offer the city, this is what we're doing on top of what we've already agreed to?
No, sir. I don't see where there's any legal relationship at this point in time. In the 2 years they will be, but the agreements are in place, and no, I don't think there's any suggestion that there be a modification of existing structure.
So with that being the case, Mr. Haygood, then what is really the city's responsibility, and how, if you already have an absolute lease as the CRA, and then there's also Riviera Beach Riviera Beach Marina Event Center LLC, to actually have to go through getting rules established when you lease someone's property? I mean, like, does this make it moot? Because clearly you can set whatever rules, but whatever the city comes back and suggests is unenforceable because there's always a superseding lease that's done with the Riviera Beach CRA and the Riviera Beach Marina Event Center LLC. So ultimately, that has already been provided to you guys in the operation and management of this center to establish these rules on how the CRA operates. So anything that they suggest or even opine on is purely recommendation and can't even be more or less even implemented for that matter because it's not a part of the lease.
Well, I don't think these policy and procedures go to the legal relationship as far as operation of the event center. I think these are policy and procedures such as was discussed about how many times and without the presentation, I know the details, how many times will the city be able to lease the property for an event? How many times the commissioners will be able to? I think in the past, the issue has been addressed of how, in fact, a person will reserve the event center and so forth. So again, I don't know if it goes to the legal relationship between the parties. I think it's just more of a practical policy of how do we operate, day to day, the event center.
So if that's true, Mr. Haygood, then what does the internal rules of the Riviera Beach Marina Event Center LLC, the City of Riviera Beach CRA, have anything to do with the City of Riviera Beach? If there's already a superseding lease that pretty much allows you to make these rules, to allow you to make these actual, go and enter into these sublease agreements with tenants of those who want to rent space for special events.
It wasn't my suggestion. I just think they were asking for comments to the proposed procedures. So
Who was asking for comments? The CRA?
I think that was a proposal from the board members who asked that it be sent to the city, but maybe they can speak.
No. But while the item is here all together, we bought this item, I think we're in June now, and this item first came up in March. Why is this here? Is this because the City of Riviera Beach requested it?
No, this item is here because over time, as we run the event center, we identify things that we'd like to change in the policies and procedures. So This is probably the third time that we've done an update over the years. So this update, addresses what are our holidays, regulations for special event applications, what's the cleaning fee, what is the deposit for different rentals. It's just a variety of minor changes that we're proposing, amongst others, for your consideration. But we can, and right now the city does not have any legal authority to impose those, but we can send them to them, get their comments, and hopefully I bring back to you changes in policies that the city also do this.
And that's, Madam Chair, and that's all I was asking, just to get some comments from the city. Also looking to insert some clause about the city's use during the pandemic and during the interim before it reverts back to the city. I mean, just have some comments. We're not saying that the city is going to take this document and say, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. We just wanted comments because we are in this mode of talking about facilities. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We will be using that building. So to be able to have some comments from the city about this policy and procedures, and that was it.
Thank you. Anything else on this? And I think I would like to, well, I can't pass, you're going to object to my passing the gavel, but I would ask if somebody would make a motion that we go through the same process with this document as we would be going through with the previous one, and that is that we each come to a separate understanding of what's in it, because I have a feeling that if we go through these, there are lots of redlining in here as I look at this document. There are a lot. It seems to me that there are lots of things that we might be wanting to pick apart, and that would be better done on an individual basis so that we can understand what exactly is in here before we bring it in front of the public again. So does anybody agree with that and want to see us table this for this evening until we have a chance to both? I know that Commissioner Lanier is interested in having the city see it, as is Mr. Lawson. Does somebody want to make a motion to that effect?
I'm sorry, what are you asking for, Madam Chair? Because you cut out for a second.
Oh, sorry. That we look at this in a one-on-one mode, as we will be doing the other document that we discussed this evening, so that we can each come to a complete understanding of what the changes are. And so that we can each weigh in on those changes without getting into the minutia of them tonight. Because it looks to me like it's a, how many pages document is it? It's a 25-page document, and there are a number, it looks to me that there are a number of changes in it. It seems to me that if we're going to be meeting one-on-one with Mr. Haygood, Mr. Evans, and somebody else, then that's something that we could have in that same conversation. That's what I'm saying. And if it's your preference that it also go in front of the city for their input, then that could be part of that motion. Mr. McCoy and then Ms. Lanier. Mr. McCoy and then Ms. Lanier.
Yeah, this needs to be one-on-one, because I don't understand. I was looking at some provisions in here that I still have not gotten clarity on, such as special events should only be, requests can only be accepted from May 1st to July 1st of each year. And I'm trying to figure out, what does that mean? You mean to tell me if you have an idea, you better have it 15 months in advance. Is that what I'm hearing? Because clearly, if I come up with something in January, right, and it's probably going to be for the following January, I only have that short period of, what, 2 months to submit a special event?
So, see, this is why I'm saying
Yeah.
you need to have these meetings. Ms. Lanier.
I just wanted to say that Pro Tem Lawson had a motion to make.
Mr. Lawson.
Well, I'm still trying to get clarification. He didn't actually make one yet, but he.
You won't let him.
Well, no. I want to ask some questions because, first of all, legal is already established. They can only give us their opinion. And if the city is not intimately involved in the leasing of this, what are we actually asking for Ms. Dawn Wynn and Mr. Jonathan Evans to possibly bring us back? If it's something specific that relates to when the city, as a city government, uses the actual facility, I would ask for them to give us what they think they need as a city, as opposed to try to redline every line or every amendment to this application. Because, like, I don't even know if Mr. Evans, and that's what I'm trying to get at, can you explain to me what does that mean to only accept applications for a special event 2 months out of the year? And clearly,
Okay, so that,
if he can answer that, which I'm sure he can, I would like to hear it. And if not, I don't know how we can expect to send agreement or even the policies like this over to the city and then them to come back and tell us all of these different things if they have no basis on why we're doing something like this.
okay. I think that the sentiment expressed earlier by Commissioner Lanier was that she wanted the city to at least have an opportunity to look at it, and if they had any recommendations. I think it was more or less a courtesy, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Lanier, that the city would have an opportunity to look at it. But I also feel very strongly that we should do one-on-one meetings about this, because if we go into every single little nitpicked item here, we will be here all evening. It won't do any of us any good. So if we could, it would be lovely if somebody would make a recommendation that we would have one-on-one meetings about this document so that we come away with a very clear understanding of what exactly the changes are.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion if we can bring this agenda item back to the next meeting, giving the commissioners enough time to meet with staff to discuss the concerns that they have, and also giving staff the opportunity to have legal and to have our city review the document.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk? Madam Clerk? Thank you.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay. Now this one, if you would read it, Madam Clerk.
Backyard garden project.
And this should say a presentation.
Okay.
We would like to bring back a formal program for your approval, but before we put all of the effort to define all of those rules and operational, we wanted to give you a presentation on this new program we would like to implement, and then hopefully get the board's consensus to move forward on this brand new program. And Anita Jenkins, our Director of Neighborhood Services, has the presentation for the board.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Anita Jenkins, Director of Neighborhood Services, and I'm very happy to bring this backyard garden presentation to you and hopefully leave with support for the idea so that we can come back more formally with you. So I'll just go through a brief presentation. Just give me a minute here. The agency currently has a robust community garden program, and we have had since 2015. Just to reiterate, we operate the demonstration garden at 1010 West 10th Street. The Singer Island Garden, to be more formally named later, is in development. We provide support to the Children's Prosperity Garden, and through support to Riviera Beach CDC, we've helped with the development of the Willie Bo Davis Meditation Garden and the Lindsay Davis Vegetable Garden, as well as creating the Lincoln Elementary Student Garden and support the Maxim Fisher Boys and Girls Club garden program. Okay. There's a picture, and that is an actual photo of our original demonstration garden as the construction was completed. These gardens are primarily located in low mod income areas, and these areas are high food insecurity areas and or food deserts. With the onset of COVID-19, we are experiencing growing food insecurity, and based on a number of indicators, we believe that that is going to increase. These areas are especially vulnerable to outside stresses. For instance, unemployment in our area is currently more than 15%. Our city is currently coming from under a stay-at-home order, and while restrictions are being eased, we're all faced with certain cautions. Our residents, even in good times, had limited access to fresh, wholesome foods. And during these days, grocery shelves are often bare of essentials, including meat, milk, bread, and especially fresh produce. While we continue to make produce available to our residents throughout our city, and the programs that are being operated not only by the city, but by partners and nonprofits in the area are ongoing, we need to do more. And we're proposing an expansion to our gardening outreach to include a backyard garden project. And this project would have several components, or 3 levels, something that we're calling the Weekend Gardener Program, the Gardenista Program, and our Urban Master Garden Program. The Weekend Gardener Program would include a kit that we'd make available to our residents that would include a small container, enriched soil, and just to make a note here, if you didn't know it, a lot of the soil in our neighborhoods, especially in Riviera Beach Heights and some sections of Monroe Heights, have high level of iron, which is not conducive to growing in ground. And that's why we propose and suggest and support above ground or container gardening. The Weekend Gardener Program would include tools, basic tools, gloves, a watering can, seedlings and seeds appropriate to the season, as well as instructions. And the components of this program, which would also be relevant to the other 2 sections, would include a simple pre-registration form. Our residents will be able to drive up to our garden on 10th Street. The gardeners would load the kit into the vehicle, so we would practice social distancing. They'd complete a checklist, and after the grow period, we would conduct a survey to evaluate our success. If we move forward with this, we could have this program implemented by July 1st. And the budget for this section would be $10,000, which could support 75 to 100 families. The next section is the Gardenista Program, which has some of the same elements, but it would include larger raised beds, but it would have the addition of a drip irrigation system and poles and screening, which you need to grow in the weather that we have and to protect against bugs and insects. We could have this section implemented by July 15th with a budget of $7,500, and we propose to assist 25 to 30 families. And then the most involved level would be the Urban Master Program, where we'd offer larger raised beds, same elements as the other 2, a more extensive drip irrigation system, but we'd have the addition, and this would allow us to pilot a rain barrel and gutter system program, which we would propose to do in partnership with our Riviera Beach Water Utilities Department. We could start this by August 1st with a budget of $5,000 to assist 8 to 10 families. Other components that are common to all 3 levels would be offering bed liners, the soil, which is enriched, the tools, the seeds and seedlings, and joint marketing. For this component or miscellaneous category, we would budget a contingency of $5,000. Implementation of the backyard garden project would take place between July and October and would be managed like the other garden programs by the Riviera Beach CDC with a total budget of $27,500, which has the potential to impact 560 to 700 people, or an average of $39 per person. And with that, we're asking for feedback on the program and approval so we can move forward to more formally implement the backyard garden program. And one thing I want to point out is that we're not
Madam
asking.
Chair, I'm sorry. Can everybody who's not talking, mute their phone, mute their mic? Thank you.
I'd like to point out that we're not asking for any new money in the budget. The $27,500 is already identified within the community garden budget for this fiscal year. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention and ask if there are any questions or comments or feedback.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Ms. Lanier.
I really, really, really like this program. I have been wanting to expand the community gardens for some time now. I am the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. The city is spending money. We are having people to come in twice a week to bring food into our community. I want it to be, and I know that that is not going to be sustainable. We're not going to be able to do that from now on. We're going to be able to have people to become self-sufficient. And a part of that is helping people to garden and grow their own food. And I really think that this is a very good program, especially at the price and especially at the number of people that we can impact with this. I just really think this is a start in a community where people are saying that they want to grow their own food. And it's a very simple process. I have a huge garden in the back of my yard. So it takes time, but it's something that is certainly worth it. And having the opportunity to be able to do that for the citizens of the city, I really am enthusiastic about it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. McCoy?
Thank you. Ms. Jenkins, is this just as I thought I seen in one of the slides that they had to pull up in all of the materials to be provided. Is this just CRA?
This would be a citywide program because the CDC secures other unrestricted dollars that we use to support the garden program. We'd be able to service the entire city.
Can you give us an allocation?
The entire city's not included in this budget.
I was just going to say, can you give us an allocation? Because I know I specifically heard mention of that this was already budgeted for in the community gardens budget. And I want to be certain that is the 27.5 coming out of the Riviera Beach CRA community garden budget, or is there some dollars that's going to be intermingled with the CDC?
There are other CDC dollars that would support the program.
Can you kind of provide us an allocation on that, please, before we move forward with this?
I can bring that back to you. And it would depend, we'd have to break out the number of people we want to serve in the city. So approximately, let me just do the calculation. Give me a quick minute.
Madam Chair, if I can ask the gentleman from District 1 that the 27.5, he can pull that out of his budget easily. We can just take care of it. It'll be done, and we can move on to the next item.
Right. I can see him put up his own scarecrow and everything in the backyard.
But
I have a question while you're looking, Ms. Jenkins. How big are those raised beds? Are they going to fit in somebody's car when they pull up?
There's a model that folds, but the box that we give for the first level can fit in the trunk of a car.
Okay.
And if something doesn't fit, if you have a cute little, for those little mini or something,
yeah,
then the gardeners could deliver it to you.
Okay. Are they the same kind of wooden ones that are in the community gardens?
Some would be wooden, and we've identified some that are flexible, sort of plastic-like. interestingly enough, so many people are getting into backyard gardening that sourcing the materials will be a challenge, but we've identified some, but inventory goes very fast. 36% of the budget would come from the CDC out of unrestricted funds, and the remainder would be available for CRA residents.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? I love this program. I wish I had I wish I didn't have all the salt air I have outside on my balcony. I would try to start.
You can't have one on your balcony?
I don't think so, no.
You can't, no?
I'm trying to grow blueberries out there now. I don't know. That takes 2 years. It's the salt air. I think it doesn't do well. Ms. Miller Anderson.
I started a indoor garden about a month ago. It was starting pretty good, and now they're kind of dying on me. But I think I've never had a green thumb, so I struggle. But I'm trying. I'm really trying. So maybe I'll get a little hint from our community.
It doesn't matter.
I get special tutorials from the,
Yeah, because I never, I'm telling you the truth, I never ever had a green thumb. Everything I would get a flower or plant, it would die. I would water it. It was nothing I could do. It would always die. But now I have a full-fledged garden in my backyard where I'm picking up okra, I'm picking up tomatoes, I'm picking up scallions.
To come over. What's with that?
My recognition that we can take donations from each commission's discretionary budget, so that would help us spread it further across the city.
I think District 5, because they're across the whole city, should come.
Yeah, I think Shirley chairs the Health and Human Services. They have about $25,000 in there.
All right. I think you're hearing that we're supportive of this program, Mr. McCoy.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Jenkins, so if I'm hearing you correctly, that was 36% is coming out of CDC dollars?
Yes, sir.
And 64. So are we going to be, I guess it's going to be executed in that fashion?
Yes, sir, unless we get, or when we get additional donations. That's why we need a pre-registration, and we're doing these types of programs first come, first serve, and we'll have an eye as to where residents are coming from.
Well, you know, I certainly like the idea and I support it. So I'm going to go ahead and pledge some community dollars to the Riviera CRA CDC. In fact, I kind of wanted to say that to Mr. Evans this morning, but you know, he's so quick to hang up the phone on me. But I certainly support it. I just don't want us to turn this into everybody in the city turns around and comes get this, and then we find ourselves having served all of the city, and then the CRA had some limitations. So I'll certainly have a conversation with you and Mr. Scott Evans at a later date on supporting those initiatives.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Okay.
So do we need to make a motion to move forward with this?
I think we have general consensus that the board would like us to bring this project back in
No,
more different.
it's not general consensus, and this is what I was confused about, because if the money's already budgeted, what exactly will we be voting on? Because if you're talking about 27,000 of it, you said 36. Did I hear you correctly in saying?
Yes.
36%?
Yes, $10,000.
Wouldn't it already be under the authority of the director? And then we wouldn't be expending the funds; we'd be implementing the program.
Yes.
It is within the authority. If you would like to vote and direct us to just implement the program immediately, the funds are already appropriated to our approved budget.
Okay, I would like that. I think the idea is great. Now, one last question: who actually, where are we getting these above ground gardens? Because are we using somebody local? Because I actually didn't realize there was such a market for this garden thing until recently, and I've seen a number of people trying to sell me a garden, and I'm just afraid that I won't be nice to the flowers. So where are we doing this at?
Garden.
there are there are a number of sources where you could buy the beds from. We generally get our soil from an approved landscape company, a nursery that gives us the appropriate soil mix. But we will definitely have to get the beds from a variety of sources. A lot of places are sold out because quite a few people are interested in backyard gardens. For this program, we're not proposing to build the beds. You know, that would be another option, but it would take some time.
Okay. Thank you. So we don't need to vote.
No. Item, unless Mr. Haygood feels that we should.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Item number 7.
A resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency approving and authorizing the execution of a professional service agreement between the agency and GovHR USA LLC for an executive search for the executive director position, providing an effective date.
Would someone care to make a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Thank you. And do we have a presentation, Mr. Haygood?
I do. Yes, pursuant to your direction, we have negotiated a proposed contract with GovHR USA, which is attached to the agreement. The representatives from Gov USA have agreed. We've agreed to the terms, and they are here to make a brief presentation to explain to you their process, timing, and so forth. So I'm going to turn it over to those representatives. I think they have a presentation for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Heidi Voorhees, and I'm here today with Jim Deneen, who's also with our firm and is in Florida. He's not far from you. I think he's about 3 hours north of you. I'm up in Chicago, and together we would be working on this assignment. Hold on 1 second. I just need to get to the button that will allow me to advance my slides. The pictures are over it. Hold on. Let's see. Hold on. I don't know what to do about it. All of our pictures are covering the item on my computer that allows me to start the PowerPoint.
Oh, we could see your screen. You're sharing your screen.
Right.
So,
you know what I mean? I need to move my cursor to, I don't know if somebody else can, one of the other hosts can just tap on the part. You know what I'm saying? I can't get to the, our pictures are in the way of the
What pictures are you talking about?
I'm talking about
screenshots. The faces, our faces are in the way of her.
She can lift it up. Lift it. She can't lift. Go up to view active cameras and just put it on. Or if it says everyone, just hide everyone for now, I guess, if you can.
Okay, let me try that. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to make a brief presentation. I'll just walk you through our process. Jim Deneen is here as well. You know, our firm is GovHR USA. We work all across the country, and we work primarily in the local government area and with organizations that serve local governments. We have consultants, our headquarters are here in the Chicago area, but we have consultants in Florida, Arizona, and Michigan. And we've done more than 450 recruitments in 31 different states since our inception. We feel like we have a good satisfaction level with our clients. We have almost a third of our clients are repeat, and 10% of them have done 2 or more processes.
What's up?
Some of the other, we've done several recruitments that are similar to this one.
Hi. Mr. McCoy, I think we can hear you. And Mason.
Sorry.
It's okay. Probably one of the more similar recruitments was a more recent one, the Norwalk, Connecticut Redevelopment Agency. We've done work here in Illinois, worked with the large metropolitan agency for planning here in the Chicago area, done their executive director recruitment twice, and also worked with World Business Chicago and a redevelopment agency in Highland, Indiana. So we've had some experience that's similar to yours. I do want to mention Jim Deneen's background, and he can talk about this a little bit. He's very familiar with Florida's redevelopment committee, redevelopment agencies, and I'll let Jim say a couple of words about his experience in this area.
Can everybody hear me? Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me?
I think so. Go ahead.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
Go ahead.
Yes, thanks for giving us an opportunity to talk to you tonight. I'll move along quickly. I know you have a long meeting. In addition to everything Heidi's going to talk to you about with GovHR and their experience and their ability to really attract people across the country, what I can help you from Florida is I've got, I hate to say this, 45 years doing this. And of that, half of it was city government, half of it was county government. And the bottom line is that half of my experience is running departments, half was being the manager. And any manager in any city or especially in a county is responsible for economic development, redevelopment, community development. And like in Dayton, where I was at, 22 years of doing a lot of community development and redevelopment because they were a landlocked city. You take that 22 years, you bring the almost 23 years in county government, of doing, especially a lot of economic development. But in Volusia County, I was there for almost 13 years. And we did a lot of community development. And in fact, I had the opportunity to work with 16 cities on 22 CRAs, with 22 CRA boards, and all the issues you can imagine in 16 different cities. And I think what we can bring to the table, and I think I can help you with, is I was successful because I really understood what it took to do this. And I really saw a lot of people doing this. You really find out what skills work. Obviously, in your case, you need a good leader, and that good leader is going to be somebody that has good administrative skills, obviously good details that helps you get right to the point when you're making decisions. But what I found is that if you really wanted to make it work in Florida with CRAs, you need good team builders, especially that understand the complex world of community redevelopment. Because while you need technical skills to get the resources and to know how to use them, I think the most important thing is appreciating the need for what I call transparent collaboration. Because what you're doing is you're trying to bring all people to unify them on a goal that's a shared goal. And you're connecting government, institution, community anchors, neighborhood champions with the development of capital and community projects, whether they be with business, business, housing, or the community. And I think that takes a kind of unique skill. And I think after all these years, I think I could help you figure out, who's the person that probably meets your needs the most, given not only all the help from the rest of the GovHR, but with my experience in Florida, especially with CRAs. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I mentioned the next slide shows some of our Florida experience. We've worked with counties, we've worked with cities, so we've had some experience in Florida. We understand the open meetings laws, we understand the terrain, so to speak. We do have what we consider a very tailored process. We will work closely with you to understand your organization and understand your expectations. And that will come with individual one-on-one meetings with each of you to get a sense of what you are looking for in the next executive director, as well as ideally we'd like to meet with staff members as well to understand the organizational culture. And from that, we would develop a position announcement and a recruitment brochure that we would use to market the opportunity. We develop the candidate outreach is a key part of this, and we use websites that cater to economic development as well as local government. We also make extensive use of social media and LinkedIn, as well as Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, all of those things. We push your opportunity out through that. And then we also use the good old fashioned way where we pick up the phone and we call folks and we say that we have this opportunity, we think that you might be a good fit. Our goal is to not only find the people who are looking for jobs, but the people who don't know they're looking, but it would be a great opportunity for them. We subscribe to databases across the country that give us email information on folks that are in economic development, and that helps us also develop a database that is tailored to Riviera Beach. We realize that we're your representatives in the process, so we make sure we acknowledge candidates' materials. We review their resume against qualifications and challenges that you've all told us about. And then we do a video interview with what we call semifinalist candidates, those that we want to know more about. We also do diligence on these candidates. We do reference calls, we search the internet, we check their social media to really understand what they have in their background, so there's no surprises for you when we present the candidates. And we would meet with you and present a report on the candidates. You would see everyone that applied. We believe that we're your partners and in being transparent. So you will know if you want to see a resume that maybe we didn't think that person was a finalist, but you want to see that resume, we can absolutely provide that for you. But you will know every single person that applies for the position. We will then walk you through what we've learned about the candidates and tell you more about them. You would decide who you want to interview. We would facilitate the interview process. We would draft questions for you to review and consider. We would do additional due diligence, criminal, credit, educational verification, those kinds of things. And then we would help you work through the final interview and selection process. And we can also of a contract if that's something that you would like. So we really believe it's important that we're partners in the process. We work hard on providing you with a strong, diverse pool of candidates. We will communicate with you frequently, and if you have a question, we'll always have our cell phone numbers. You'll be able to call us if you want to know something about the status of the recruitment. We're with you until you are satisfied that you have the right person for the job. If we go through the first recruitment and we don't find the right person that you all can agree upon, then we will find you additional candidates and we will stick at no additional fee. We're going to stick with you until you are satisfied. I don't expect that to be a problem. I think we usually have great success with our economic development and redevelopment recruitments, but every once in a while, you know, we continue to work with you. We also offer a guarantee that if the candidate leaves for any reason, within the first year, if they leave, if you decide it's not a fit, whatever happens, we come back and do the recruitment again for no consulting fee, only the expenses involved in bringing the candidates in and advertising. So as I've mentioned, we commit to you that we will be available and accessible throughout the process. We will be a good representative of you in our interactions with the candidates, and we will be transparent with you in our information that we have about the candidates as well. We are very committed to local government. We work hard, and we regularly interact with organizations on a national level. We support financially and with our time and our expertise the International City and County Management Association, the National Forum for Black Public Administrators, the Local Government Hispanic Network, and the League of Women in Government. So we are very active in these organizations. We know their presidents and their boards and can reach out to them as well to see if they have any suggestions for candidates. So we believe that we have a great depth of experience, a solid reputation in this field, and our combination of national focus plus local expertise, which Jim would bring, we think makes us a good firm for you to contract with. So we really hope to have the opportunity to work with you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Stop sharing my screen with you as well.
Thank you, Heidi. It says in your professional services agreement that you can begin within 5 days after we vote to enter into an agreement with you. Can you give us a ballpark on how long the whole process will take from your experience in doing these kinds of searches?
Yes, we always say that it's 90 days from the time you sign the should be ready to appoint.
Okay.
You then that person may need to give notice. So I would say, they may need another 30 to 60 days to give notice.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Heidi, thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for taking on the opportunity of working with us to help us find the CRA Executive Director. I want to address some of the challenges and expectations that we have, that I personally have, and some of my other colleagues have expressed as well. When it comes to just the redevelopment of our marina area, creating a downtown corridor, revitalizing our major highway intersections, and just removing and eliminating blight. I want to make sure that this candidate is focused on and also has addressed any major projects, because while I love these smaller projects that we've worked on when it comes to the social engagement, the gardens we've done, those are great for the community, but we really have to address the development of the community. We have to address the housing concerns that we have in our community. And that downtown corridor and revitalizing those intersections is vital. So just finding someone that has those projects in their pipeline or something that they've overseen is something that I would be very interested in with a director coming in.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone, Mr. McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for the interruptions earlier. I got distracted here. So I was curious, and I did get a briefing from our executive director regarding the process. Did you speak to where, like, I guess the routine updates on where we are? Is that going to be communicated back to our executive director?
Well, you would identify who you would like us to have as a touch point. So if you'd like us to send it to all of you, if you'd like us to send it to the executive director, we will do, or to Mr. Hayward, whatever you do, you tell us, we will do.
Well, I only want an update, and I don't necessarily know, at least I'm gonna speak for myself. We're not, we've kind of made the decision as a body to seek a consulting firm as yours to go out and do this. So I would just defer that to our executive director as to where the progress is. But in no means can you expect any kind of communication from me, because I just want to make sure that, we're kind of kept abreast of where we are during the process. And, you guys did come highly recommended. I actually had asked somebody and they had heard of you. I'm trying to remember who it was, but I really look forward, as Councilperson Lawson, Commissioner Lawson said, trying to make sure that somebody actually fits what it is that we need. However, there is one caveat, and I don't know if this is something that can be satisfied, but those that you guys, I guess, preliminary screen, can those also be provided to, I guess, the manager if you screen someone out? Because obviously I think we've set forth bare minimum criteria, but there are some unique circumstances and situations with just being in Riviera Beach, being in Palm Beach County and South Florida altogether, that would probably separate us from any other geographic area. I mean, we're metropolitan South Florida, and if you'd probably be hard pressed to find more than 5 other areas throughout the country that's uniquely situated as we are. Demographics, population, the area to the beach, the intermodal ability of being able to access train 95. I mean, just there's a number of different factors, but certainly I want to make sure that the executive director can also have, some sort of regular and routine communication. And, if someone's obviously screened that don't meet those general requirements we set forth, that, certainly I would respect that you do your job in following the letter of the scope and minimum requirements, but, at least so we can know where we are as a city. And in fact, who thinks that they actually can apply for the city of Riviera Beach or the Riviera Beach CRA, because that really means a lot when we recruit going forward, because obviously I can tell you, when I was out of college, I was probably applying for positions I knew I wasn't qualified for. But if somebody got an opportunity to sit down with me, that was going to be my shot to give it all I got. But, you know, certainly that's really what I'm, what respectfully request, if you can kind of share those as well. In fact, I think you almost have a statutory obligation because we operate in the sunshine, and even if they're not considered, we still have to maintain it. So thank you so much if you could do that for us.
Absolutely. We would provide you with, what we'll probably do is put together a matrix that has all of the candidates on it, and we would fill in, you know, certain areas depending on what you are all telling us the qualifications are that you want. I believe strongly that it's good to know what your minimum qualifications are. But I think being as open-ended as possible, allowing for experience, combinations of experience and education are important for all the reasons that you've indicated. And yeah, we will sometimes tell you, we may say, you know, this person doesn't have this specific thing in their background, but we really think they're a rising star and we want to tell you about them. It's your call if you want to interview them. But we will err on the side of presenting more candidates and folks that show promise, as opposed to just sticking to, you know, a small number.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson and then Ms. Miller-Anderson, but before I go to Mr. Lawson, you will be speaking with us individually so that we
Yes.
yeah, okay. I wanted to be sure because otherwise tonight we should be doing what Mr. Lawson did, which is to say, here's what we think we should have, but you'll have an opportunity to speak with each of us. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 points. I saw that the estimated recruitment time is anywhere between 90 and 120 days. There's surrounding municipalities have hired executive staff and CRAs in a shorter period of time. So I want to try to get it within that 90-day, if not less, that period, because even though we want to make sure that we make the right decision, we want to go ahead and move forward with it as quickly as possible. Communications, I believe Councilman McCoy mentioned that it will be going through our executive director. Okay. Now, my question would be, with those communications going through our executive director, what is the event that our executive director or current interim director applies for the position? Is that where we'd want the communications, or would we want those points of reference going in through Mr. Haygood? So I'm kind of confused or concerned with that option in the event that he does decide to apply for that permanent position. So it's just it's more so.
Thus far, Mr. Haygood has been the point of contact. I can make it my responsibility to make sure that the board gets updates for this process along the way, but allow Mr. Haygood to be the point of contact and the person who's bringing you those updates.
I was going to recommend that we have legal as the point of contact and we just get our updates, just in the event that we wouldn't discourage or deter Mr. Evans, who's been here for years, from applying, so that we could actually have those updates consistently coming through. Mr. Haygood would be my recommendation to my colleagues.
And we would, if there is going to be internal candidates, we would suggest that it be somebody else like Mr. Haygood that we send the information to, just to keep it completely separate.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. Ms. Miller-Anderson?
Thank you. Typically, we have not provided that information to the current person who's in position. I mean, I'm speaking more on the city side, but Haygood would be probably most appropriate. But I just want to make sure that I wasn't sure if I heard you correctly. So everyone that applies, will we be provided those names? Yes. Okay. And then will the council commission be involved in the whittling down of those names, or you all would do that based on what?
Well, we will take the information that you all tell us in our individual meetings, and then we will use that to narrow the field. There will be some people who are not even remotely qualified. And we will interview those that we feel are qualified or show great promise. And we will make sure that you have the resumes of the people that we actually do the video interviews of, and you'll have the names of everyone else. So if you spot a name on there and you say, you know what, I really want to see this resume, that's very easy to make that happen.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
When will you start making these appointments with us to speak to us?
Well, I think Mr. Deneen would be in touch with you probably next week, the latter part of the week, to start setting those up, and you'll all decide if you want to do them, you know, via Zoom and video or phone, or how you want to handle that.
Okay, thank you.
I can start doing that the latter part of next week, the week after that for sure. And then you can tell me, I'm here in Florida and I'm willing to meet any way you want. I'm willing to meet in person. I'm willing to meet through the internet, on the phone, but I really want to talk to everybody individually so that I really understand where they're coming from.
Mr. McCoy, thank you. Are you finished, Ms. Miller Anderson? Yes, Mr. McCoy.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the pronunciation of your last name. Is it Denon?
It's Deneen. It's that good old Irish name.
Okay. What are you local, relatively local, Tri-County area?
I'm up here in Daytona Beach, New Smyrna Beach, up by Daytona Beach.
Okay, well.
So I can drive down. That's not a problem. You know, I can set something up ahead of time and meet with people however you'd like to do.
Well, I would hope, does Mr. Hager, have we provided for this in the contract separate from the, I guess, the services, the transportation, or is that already included?
I'm going to let them speak to that because the contract as structured specified that this was going to be only virtual, that there would not be any trips, and any trips would be for $1,000 a trip. So,
well, let me clarify that. You're right. Mr. Hayward is right. Because all the proposals we were doing for a while there were all virtual because everyone was in that mode. If you do want travel, the only expense would be Mr. Deneen's mileage. That would be extra. So we are just saying, we're estimating trips, like if somebody had to get on a plane and stay in a hotel, that might be up to $1,000. We would only charge you the actual cost of him getting there. So if it takes, he wouldn't pay for his time to get there, just his mileage.
What I'm offering is it all depends on how you feel. So I don't want you to feel we're willing to do it all virtual, but some people really would rather, you know, I don't mind, would rather talk to me and say, this is what I really am looking for. And I'm a kind of a face-to-face guy. And if you want to do that, I have no apprehensions about coming down and setting something up and meeting with everybody. It just really depends on what you're comfortable with. We want to make sure that we're providing the personal service that you're paying for.
I, for one,
we'll
don't
modify the contract to provide for that contingency.
Okay. I don't mind meeting this way.
I couldn't hear you.
He's going to modify the contract to provide for that contingency.
But does that really need to be modified? Because
yes, it is presently, the contract presently reads, any trips will be $1,000, period. It does not provide for any millage, any mileage or expenses separately from that provision.
But I guess I when he said meet with us, I just assumed that was already encompassed inside of the contract. So two questions. It's not. Okay. So the first question is, do we look to have Mr. Deneen come here, or are we looking to perhaps do this all virtual? Because I mean, I guess I assume, but I think virtual works just as well, in my opinion.
That's fine.
It's up to the board.
Mr. Lawson, and go ahead, Mr. Haygood. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that if in fact there was a request that Mr. Deneen come, that we will provide a provision in here that we will pay his expenses, his travel.
I personally don't mind meeting to discuss things this way, but I have a sense that you really should at least make one visit to our city to get the you know, but let's hear from Ms. Miller Anderson, and then I forget, I've lost my place, but Ms. Miller Anderson first.
I think Lawson was first, and then
Okay,
you can come back
thank
to
you.
me.
You can go ahead,
Well-
Ms. Miller. Go ahead.
Well, what I was gonna say, I can only speak for how we've done it in the past, and of course, that doesn't mean it was always done the right way, but the only interaction, personal interaction face-to-face was when they came, when the people actually came to do the interview with us. We did not meet the recruiting people. We spoke to them only by phone. There really was no need to meet face-to-face. The only time was at the very end when they were, when the candidates were all there and they were facilitating the interview process and all of that. But everything typically went over the phone, and we weren't doing virtual stuff at that point, and that there was no issue with that. It was by email and by phone. I don't see spending that money for them just to come down here and talk. I mean, we can do that by phone or virtual individually. I think that's an expense we don't need to incur.
Anyone else? Mr. McCoy, did you raise your hand just then?
I think Mr. Lawson was first.
Oh, Mr. Lawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. While I do love Mr. Deneen's energy, I don't mind meeting virtually until we have the candidates. And we would definitely get to meet in person because I'm excited to actually meet you, and I'm excited for actually bringing this firm on because you've captivated us in a way that I'm excited to work with your organization. So thank you.
Mr. McCoy?
Can I say what I was going to say?
Yes, you can.
I was going to say what Commissioner Lawson just said.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess it just makes sense, you know, for efficiency purposes. And I know Daytona is nice, but let me tell you, it doesn't have anything on Singer Island. Like, we got one of the best on South Florida. But we'll allow, you know, that time to come when we bring our candidates and we can have a conversation then. But I think virtual should work.
Okay.
Anyone else before we call the Ms. Miller Anderson?
This is the last thing. To your point, Madam Chair, about getting to know our city, obviously the expectation is for them to really get to know our city. And I think they can learn a lot from us when they speak with us, but they certainly need to do their own research so that they know what they're looking for as well. I mean, make sure they find someone that is a fit, you know how to work.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. McCoy?
And my apologies, I had really got distracted a moment ago. So Mr. Deneen will be the person that will be our contact.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be with him from up here in Chicago, but he would be your point of contact.
I can tell you from Chicago, the reception is bad up there.
Sorry about that.
You know, hey, we live the good life here. We on the beach, so no wonder I can hear him so good.
Okay. Anything else, Madam Clerk? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
nice to meet you both.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good rest of your meeting. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, did we have any public comments? Where'd she go? Did we have any public comments?
I believe for item number 8.
Okay.
Yes, we don't have any items for the issues the items we've discussed, only for number 8.
Okay. And
Madam
we
Chair?
are, yes.
Are you talking about general public comments or
Yeah, general, she
specifically?
just said
by
we
agenda?
don't have any general public comments. We only have a public comment for item 8, as I understood you. Am I right, Madam Clerk?
I'm sorry, we do have one general public comment and
Oh.
one comment for number 8.
Thank you. Okay, then I think it's 7:58. We should take the public comment.
Okay, this comes from Nicole Thomas. She says, hello, my name is Nicole Thomas and my business is Blessed Touch. In your meeting on May 20th, 2020, I was mentioned, but not by name. There was a comment made. If she's a standalone, I guess she stands alone. As a small business owner that recently took the leap to focus on full-time entrepreneurship, This was very disheartening to hear from the leadership in the city where I chose to plant and grow my business. My goal and vision is not to stand alone, but to stand united with other businesses, the leadership and residents of Riviera Beach, to become integrated into the community of Riviera Beach and make an impact is what I strive for. I currently volunteer at St. George's 3 days a week, engage with the homeless population on the streets to meet needs they have. I participated as a vendor at the Martin Luther King event in January, and I will be participating in the Palm Beach voter engagement event through FRRC on June 19, 2020. The scenery that Riviera Beach offers is amazing, and what I have to offer to the residents is a fair trade as a professional and as an individual. I welcome any or all of the board members to visit my studio, stop by the event, or minimally visit my website to get to know one of your newer business owners. Thank you for allowing me to take time to my comment.
Thank you. Item number 8.
A resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency amending the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency Small Business COVID-19 Forgivable Loan Program, providing an effective date.
Thank you. Would someone care to make a motion?
Move into a different
Second.
agenda item.
Who's speaking now?
Oh.
Someone's I'm getting crosstalk here. Okay.
Whoever's caller 03, that's who.
They need to mute their line, their caller. Who is that caller? Is that Shirley?
Could the person call? No, it's not Shirley. Could the person who's calling in mute your phone, please?
But who is it?
I don't know. Oh wait, let me look up here. It must be, let's see.
It doesn't have a name by it. Mr. Evans, Mr. Haygood, are you all aware of who the caller is? Is it someone on there for one of the items?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
Caller
I'm not
number
sure.
3. Caller number 3. Would you identify yourself?
Well, we need the platform to mute them ourselves because this is.
We
well,
have that platform.
They're muted now.
Okay.
I did mute them. I did mute the caller.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Evans, do we have a presentation?
Yes.
Excuse me. Before you do that, can the chairperson has that functionality to be able to mute these people? Because it seems like, without us having to make an announcement, this is something that the chairperson should be able to be an administrator on the go-to-meeting to go ahead and directly mute somebody that's giving feedback, because you can clearly see who the person is that we're receiving audio from. And I don't want to have to wait on anybody else. When it comes back, it should be an automatic thing, unless it's a member of the board or staff that's actually presenting. It kind of disrupts a little bit.
So can we make that happen for our, if we have another virtual meeting, that is, we may be meeting in person in the next time, but yes, that would be good to, if we have to have another virtual meeting, it would be good to have that capacity. All right, do we have a presentation, Mr. Evans?
Yes, I just wanted to give an overview to the board. This is an update, an amendment to the COVID-19 Small Business Loan Program. We had a very good response when we originally were able to release it. So tonight's resolution is requesting an additional $40,000 in funding. That would bring the current approved amount from $125,000 to $125,000 to $165,000. We currently have pending applications for approximately $155,000 in that. So this amount that we're requesting tonight would cover the existing applications that are pending for the ones that are located in the CRA. The second amendment is related to the public comment we heard earlier. The board had previously determined not to include massage parlors due to the potential of, in some cities where they have some of these locations are undesirable. We're proposing that we do allow this for our applications, as we did receive one application, and the requirement would be that they're in fact have a licensed mismatch therapist, which the application did include. So we'd like to increase the funding to $40,000 by an additional $40,000 for the project, and make that minor amendment to allow that existing application we've received from the massage parlor to be permitted.
Madam Chair?
Before we take comments, do we have any, we did have a public comment. Let's hear that first and then we can have our discussion. Madam Clerk.
Yes, there is a public comment. This is from Nicole Thomas, and she says, I would like to begin by saying thank you for taking a further look into the profession of massage therapy in regards to this loan/grant. As licensed massage establishments and therapists, we have been impacted by COVID the most by being made to close due to Governor DeSantis' executive order, and secondly, by risk for exposure. Our clients are slow to come back to receive therapy, elderly and especially. Governor DeSantis issued Executive Order 2072 March 20, 2020, and we were a few days later instructed to cease operating as massage therapists. According to our latest information from the State Board, massage therapists are healthcare practitioners and were fully authorized to practice massage therapy on May 4th, 2020 under Section 5 of EO 2112. Governor DeSantis issued EO 2112 on April 29, 2020, which can be read here. This executive order authorized healthcare practitioners, including massage therapists and massage establishments, to return to practice during phase 1 under certain conditions in all counties in Florida. Palm Beach County entered phase 1 May 11, 2020. There was a need to secure PPE to meet the requirements for a responsible restart at that point, with stores and online site not having the supply to meet the demand. Massage clients are ready to come back to receive therapy, but many are still reluctant to be in an enclosed space without being able to maintain social distancing. We are currently in a recovery period from an economic standpoint. These funds will allow us to keep our doors open and stay devoted to growing our business until the majority of citizens feel less of a threat of COVID exposure. When we will reach this point is uncertain due to the cases of positive tests still being high numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I think Mr. Lawson raised his hand first. Mr. Lawson?
I did not realize, it slipped my mind. I wanted to give a disclosure that I did speak briefly to Nicole with this massage vendor. And she did, I did meet her at her business to discuss her concerns with being left off of the list. So I wanted to give that disclosure as well.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy.
Whew, I'm sorry, members. This is tough. This is a tough meeting. I was just getting choked out. I'm trying to do two things at once. I'm trying to give my son a bath and
Don't leave him alone in the bathtub.
I know, right? But he's 6 years old, so you know he's doing good. But literally, I had to walk away because I was getting choked out by Febreze. I thought something was coming through my air conditioning vents. Okay, you can't come in. I defer, Madam Chair.
Okay. Anyone else have questions?
Just know that as an educator, I'm a mandatory mandated reporter.
Report, yes.
For DCF, so.
Get right on that. Anyone else? Okay, so did we have a motion? We did, I think. Yes. Okay, so Madam Clerk. Oh, Mr. McCoy. Wait, let's let Mr. McCoy weigh in if he's back with us.
I'm sorry, my son just came out of the bathroom, and I want to make sure that I was being responsible, if you will.
You've already been reported to DCF, so it's all right. All right,
hey,
do you have a question?
Fine, but members, I really will ask that you really, because I was really concerned about this, and I actually have the unique pleasure of serving as one of the application reviewers for Palm Beach County. And one of the things that I noticed that the county did was they actually amended the $60 million grant that they actually had received from the federal government to prioritize those that was exactly affected by the governor's executive order with closing. And as much as I want to help everybody, we know everything has their budgetary limitations. And this is one of the businesses that I knew personally because she's relatively close to my office. And certainly I think, you know, I would ask the members to support this. She sent us a number of emails, and she's a licensed massage therapist. And I think certainly we shouldn't exclude her, because if we include barbershops and nail salons and hair salons, then, you know, I mean, I don't want to be the one to differentiate between how somebody makes a profession. I can appreciate that somebody makes an honest profession. And, you know, nothing about anything that I've seen or heard about this business or the industry would lend to be anything that we shouldn't support, especially because we're a city and that's what we're here for. Taxation is without representation is a license plate on vehicles if you were in this District of Columbia. I don't want that to be a model that we have to adopt here as a city of Riviera Beach. So members, I've spoken to her several times. And when we first took this item up, I had her in mind when I first asked why would we exclude massage therapists, but I've known her to be nothing other than a consummate professional licensed by the state of Florida as a licensed massage therapist. And I would ask to at least include her. And then wait, if member McCoy didn't get you with that one, this is the only person that has a BTR in the city of Riviera Beach as a licensed massage therapist. So that ought to tell you something. And if we don't support her, then we're essentially saying that we don't support the businesses that really make Riviera Beach great and that contributes to our tax base. So members, it is my plea and my humble request that we support including massage therapists as a business that's eligible for the CRA grant program. I'm sorry, forgivable loan program.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. You have me convinced. Mr. Evans, is there anything else that, anything in question with regard to this grant? Did anyone else raise concerns or issues?
I don't think so. We've gotten some concerns from some applicants. A lot of the applications came in incomplete, so we're waiting for them to provide additional materials. Of course, when we give the final determination, they then have the right to appeal. So I think we may end up getting a couple of appeals next month's meeting. But for the most part, we've received over 40 applications, and some of them are not in the CRA, but there's been quite a good response, and we're processing them in order of receipt.
Okay, and the ones that decide to appeal, will we have sufficient funding if their appeals are granted?
If what we can do is if we bring back the appeals, the board will have the ability to provide that funding if they so choose.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Mr. McCoy, did you have another question?
I'm sorry, that was new to me. So you said appeals. I mean, is this appealing the criteria that we set for what exactly would be getting appeal? Actually, you know what? It may not even be in order to talk about it. I mean, I just don't know. I would love to see if we can support every business that's been operating within the city CRA district. But, you know, I don't know. I don't, that just seems unusual that, I mean, was there specific requirement? Was this an excluded business, Mr. Evans?
I would rather not start to go into individual applications with so many pending. But I would say the number one reason for the applications being not proceeding is if they were not located in the CRA. And so that's, I think we have at least 8 or 9 of those. And what we will do, I know that the city's developing their program, so we will send all of those applicants information on the city's program as soon as it's finalized, and also let the city know that we've received applications. So that would be the number one reason for some of our applications not being processed.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Mr. Evans, I saw that another major reason for applications pending was BTRs. And I connected with Ms. Grace Jones and Umbrella Weathers. They're going to be the points of contact for the BTRs over at the city. So I know Mr. Jonathan Evans, he defined those 2 employees to be able to work with you on those so that they can get those expedited and get the grants out, because a lot of them are really anxious to receive these checks. So if you want to follow directly up with them, they're working on the BTRs now.
Okay. I think Mr. Evans told me that Mr. Scott Evans told me he was working on that they already given the names of the people with the business tax issues to the city. So that's great. Mr. McCoy. Mr. McCoy. Oh, sorry.
All right, follow up, Madam Chair. As of this morning, they hadn't received it, so I did give those over to them. Even though the email was sent out, that was something that was in transit. So there was a lack of communication with the two.
Okay.
So we made sure they got it this morning.
Okay, great.
They are
McCoy.
working aggressively. So Mr. Evans, they will be able to jump on that for you.
Great.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
McCoy.
Madam Chair. Thank you, members. You know, I serve as a member of the Small and Medium Business Committee related to the Economic Recovery Initiative. And one of the things that I've come across, and for instance, I've been the person that's filling a lot of these calls, both personally and also on my city office number, is that there were a number of problems as to why a person did not renew. And if they did not renew, there was issues of misplaced, lost, or whatever the case may be. And unlike you guys, I mean, it was, and I can't say because I don't know what every member's commitment was, but to do anything for small and medium business, I did have a conversation with the manager about setting up a fund specifically to those businesses that Councilman Lawson indicated, and those that didn't have business tax receipts because they was misplaced, they relocated or some of that sort, to effectuate getting them those business tax receipts solely because we want to make sure that if they're one of the eligible businesses that they can get in time to have a BTR or get whatever information they need from the city without fee or without delay. But, you know, I would really ask that all of those that are interested that have those challenges be patient because there are some inevitable delays, being that, you know, our city hall is still kind of in transition of opening back up. So that's what I wanted to say because I did receive a number of those calls, but certainly I want to be able to help as much as I can. And this is a forgivable loan. And I have the intention that we can help businesses to get really back operating full-fledged. And thankfully, I know me personally, I've seen how this has impacted businesses, but I'm really grateful that we as a city can take the initiative. Even more so, right? We followed off of Boynton, but then yesterday I seen the city of Boca Raton roll out their plan. And obviously it was really ironic because they actually have in their budget economic recovery. They have a budget specifically for economic recovery, and their budget rolled out with a $500,000 program for grants. Now, obviously we didn't think this because, you know, we just didn't plan to have a situation like this, but I'm glad to have our staff persons, which I must commend because I've had to communicate a lot with them, Mr. Scott Evans, Ms. Anita Jenkins, and Mr. Andre Lewis, who were immediately available when I had to request information regarding applications because I wanted any and every business. Sorry, Mason is talking. Oh, to the police. Sorry.
Madam Chair, could we call the question, please?
Yes, thank you. Madam Clerk. You're
Commissioner
not.
Lanier,
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel.
Yes,
That motion carries with Commissioner McCoy absent for the vote.
thank you. Item number 9, resolution.
Resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency approving and authorizing the execution of the First Amendment to the purchase and sale agreement between the agency and Gerald Properties LLC for the purchase of that certain property located on the east side of Broadway between 12th and 13th Street to extend the feasibility period to August 30th, 2020, providing an effective date.
Thank you. Could someone?
So moved.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry.
if I could go first, just to get a little bit of background.
I don't think we had a second. I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, did we have a second?
We did not.
Mr. Lawson, your mic is not on. Are you trying to second?
No, he's not.
Can you
Mr.
repeat the motion? I'm just getting back in, please. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can you read the resolution title?
A resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency approving and authorizing the execution of the First Amendment to the purchase and sale agreement between the agency and Gerald Properties LLC for the purchase of that certain property located on the east side of Broadway between 12th and 13th Street to extend the feasibility period to August 30th, 2020, providing an effective date.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. This item was approved by the CRA board on January 20th. And so we're just asking to amend the feasibility period to give us time. And what we're waiting on is to borrow the dollars to provide financing to make the purchase of the property. When the property purchase was approved by the CRA board, we met with our financial advisors, which includes Jolinda Herring, our bond counsel, and Hilltop Securities. And they have provided us with advice related to previous borrowings. They indicated that the timing is very ideal right now for the CRA to refinance all of our existing debt, that we can save the agency considerable dollars. So if we're going to borrow more money for the land purchase, as would be required by this contract, then at this time, we could also refinance our existing debt in order to save the city CRA substantial dollars. So this item, we're extending it. We'd like to bring it back to you for in July. And as a result of that, we will be proposing to not only purchase this property and borrow the funds for that, but to lower our interest rates by refinancing our existing debt. And our existing debt can only be paid on August 1st. So that's why this item would come to you before then for closing on the 1st, so that we could pay off our existing debt and replace it with new lower interest rates. Also, at similar timing, we've been negotiating to also add in several other properties to this purchase, one being the Yachtsman. So that will give us time to bring that hopefully back to you in July also, so that the city and CRA can control the entire marina property for future development.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson and then Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The due diligence period is complete, correct, Mr. Evans?
The due diligence would need to be, this would extend it all the way through August 30th. Yes.
August 30th.
There were actually two feasibility. There were two periods. One was the due diligence to see if, in fact, the property was such that you want to purchase it, and then we reserved the right for the board to decide whether or not they could get the financing. So this is just extending the financial feasibility period.
Okay, so then the due diligence period for appraisal and environmental audit was complete already.
That's correct.
So we're not extending that period.
That's correct.
Okay, what was the appraised value on this property, Ms. Evans?
We've attached two appraisals from the original. So it was, the purchase price is 1.85 million was appraised by Callaway and Price, and then we had it appraised by another company. Let me just find that. It was a similar value. The other pricing was 2 million. So we came to agreement with the property owner for meeting them less than 2 million, a little more than the 1.85.
Okay, so the original is 1.75, and the other one was 2 million, and then we came to the agreement of 1.85.
No, 1.85 and 2 million were the two appraised values.
Two appraised values, excellent.
Yes.
And then the environmental audit or completion inspection that was completed, did that show that there was no issues with potential contamination?
We did environmental on this project about 5 or 6 years ago. This is property primarily that we owned before in combination with Viking. So the environmental did not indicate any major issues. So we did not do a new study since we had one from multiple years ago. But some of this land was already owned by the CRA. As you know, preceding this property sale, we abandoned Old 13th Street, and then we concluded a property swap with Viking, which provided some of our parcels to them and some of their parcels to us. And then under those new configurations, both Viking and the CRA are in better position. And now, if with this transaction closing, we'll be able to own the entire block in the marina, which is of critical strategic importance to our future.
So we did the environmental about 5 years ago, and this is property that we've owned before. What has transpired over the last 5 years in reference to that property? Has anything been demolished, built, any construction, anything happened on that lot since then?
Yes, since then we built the entrance sign to the marina, which is right at the corner of 13th Street and Broadway. I believe that was the extent of it. Viking owned a small portion of it that had a building on it some years ago. I'd have to check on the timing of that. That was demolished.
Okay.
And the rest of the land has been vacant and remained vacant for 20 years.
Well, that would be my only concern, just the value and then the health and wellness of our residents, just to make sure that the property has not been contaminated. The only issue is that that same lot has been used as a parking lot on multiple occasions. So the oils leaking, the fuels, any cars that have been parked on that lot could have possibly contaminated that site and caused for a problem later on. So that's why I was kind of concerned or thought that we possibly would visit an environmental study.
And we only have a phase 1 environmental study is what we normally do, which looks at the history of the sales of the property and the usage. It would be, normally you would review that, and if it indicates that there's something, say there was a gas station or there something previously, then we would take it to a phase 2, which is quite an expensive and long process that can take up to 6 months.
So phase 1 would determine the condition of the property, and then phase 2 would be the more expensive one that would actually be a little bit more in depth, correct?
Yes, and we did a phase 1 several years ago, and I don't think that we either way. This property is of critical strategic importance. The phase 1 did not identify anything like a gas station previously, so I think that since we own part of the property, it would be in our best interest to acquire it.
Yeah, not concerned with acquiring it, because I definitely think we need to acquire it. I'm just concerned with us acquiring a property that has been contaminated. That would be my only issue. And without doing that environmental study would be the only concern, and not being prepared and understanding that we've taken all of our proper steps, because 5 years ago is a long time, especially when I've seen events held at this marina where that's been used as a parking lot. So that was my only concern with the land, but parking cars is not going to be the same as a gas station that's been on the parcel or the lot. But at the same time, it's just, I would have wanted a environmental study completed prior to us, moving forward.
We can order an update, accelerated update immediately following this meeting, if that's the board's desire.
What is the cost of an environmental study? Because it's just how, as you know, development of the community, building and working on the betterment of our community, but also health and wellness is priority. So if we're going to be utilizing this as a building block for our major hub in our city, I want to make sure that we take all the proper steps. And an environmental study, being that I've worked in real estate, the phase 1 is not as expensive. So I would say that it'd be something. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can do an accelerated one for about $3,500 to $4,000.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Anything else? And Ms. Lanier?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask, I know that the CRA is purchasing and the feasibility, but we need to have a conversation about the feasibility of not so much the purchase as is the development. Right now with the pandemic, we are entering into a phase in Palm Beach County where we have had more cases in the last 7 days than we have had ever. We're going to have to, as a board, have some discussion about redevelopment. Businesses or office demand, commercial, retail, restaurant demand is down significantly. So we're going to have some conversation. We may be purchasing these properties, but when we're talking about development, we're going to have some hard conversations about what that means for this city in the middle of a pandemic.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Jonathan Evans has scheduled facilities discussions with us individually, one-on-ones. And I agree with Councilwoman Lanier that we also need to discuss this with in the CRA side as well, just how we're going to develop, what's going to be the direction. And I think that's going to be one of our hot topics that we need to go ahead and focus on when we hire our executive director. So I think that's something that's going to be pressing, because we can talk amongst each other, but giving the executive director the direction from our colleagues and individually would be the best approach for that. So I agree with you. Absolutely 100%, Councilwoman Lanier.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy?
So my question was actually in response to Councilwoman Lanier. So are you suggesting that this isn't the right time to do this, I guess, refactoring or remodification of the CRA's current debt and also this modification to the sale?
Well, Councilman McCoy, I am not a financial forecaster. I am not a developer. I think that we need to have expert advice on how we as a CRA are going to look at redevelopment and development in the middle of a pandemic. How is that going to look? With all of these sectors significantly declining, how we as a board going to move forward with this type of development? We're buying properties, we're looking at, refinancing. How is that going to look, in 6 months or a year? Because, to be honest, the pandemic, given the fact that, the lack of testing, everything that's going on with it, it is not going anywhere. And the fact that our city and our county has spiked 7 times over in the past 7 days is something to pause for. That we need to look at how we're going to move forward with redevelopment in terms of our money, and how does that look for us?
Go ahead, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the follow-up. So,
And I'm sorry, Mr. McCoy, I just also want to be clear that I believe that acquisition is good. Don't get me wrong on that tip. I believe that acquisition is good, but I also believe that in the middle of a pandemic, development is going to be difficult. So we have to have some conversations about that.
But for the purposes of this evening, this particular vote is about moving forward with this item. So what you're suggesting is that we have conversations, not that we put any obstacles in the way of this vote.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy, did you have anything else?
I did. So I was just I guess my question was, so are we suggesting or implying that the appraisal should probably be reconsidered or is not ripe, if you will, being that we had economic changes here in the economy locally and nationwide that we've been provided?
No, I'm not saying that, Councilman McCoy. All I'm saying is that this is an acquisition. I have no problems with acquisitions in terms of property being bought for and by the city. What I do have is that what is that going to do for us in the next 6 months to a year when we can't develop it, or we can develop? There's obstacles to us doing that. So because I said earlier that I'm not a financial forecaster, I'm not a developer, we need to have some expert in terms of how this economy is going to look in a year. We are amassing properties, we're buying properties, good, but how will we develop those properties in the midst of a pandemic? And I think we need to know those answers. We need to have some kind of information about how we're going to move forward with that.
Anything else, Mr. McCoy?
Yeah, I agree, Councilwoman Lanier. And on that note, I'm going to reserve an opportunity to make a motion to the executive director after we dispose of the action items on the agenda, because I really am concerned that we're not getting these agendas timely, and that's a problem because the city has made it an absolute point to send us an agenda no less than a week in advance. And if it's not a week in advance, it comes as an addition. And I just want to reinforce that that's what's happening over here, because some of these things that Councilwoman Lanier brought up, or Commissioner Lanier brought up, I'm just a little concerned, because even if you had the opportunity to bring up some concerns regarding the item, it's likely on Monday or Tuesday, or maybe even the day of the meeting. So I'm going to reserve an opportunity to do that, because I know the city is taking concerted efforts regarding the publishing of our agenda ahead of time. So I support what we have in front of us. So we'll move on. And I just respectfully request an opportunity to have a discussion on this item.
Okay. If there's nothing else, can we call the question? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel.
Yes,
That motion carries.
thank you. Now, before we go into comments, Mr. McCoy wanted to have a discussion. Your microphone, Mr. McCoy.
Madam Chair, I'm trying to get my agenda back on my screen here. Did we dispose of all the action items?
I believe we did. That was number 9, and everything else is yes.
So this is not my member comments, but Mr. Evans, the city has taken a real assertive approach, and I got to commend City Manager Jonathan Evans and also, his staff, Ms. Deirdre Jacobs, who's the assistant manager, and also Rashay Huff. They don't put out an agenda less than a week in advance. And if for some reason, by some chance, it occurs that Thursday morning, we all know about it. But I don't want to see things like this, regardless of whatever the reason is, come 1 week, less than 1 week in advance. Meaning that if we have to add something later, it comes as an addition. And then Friday's the cutoff, because it's really a lot. I mean, we're asked to do a lot. We're asked to come to meetings. We're asked to know the agenda. We're asked to be able to have staff time to discuss these items. But I mean, in support of some of the comments I heard from the other commissioner, like, let's just make sure going forward that we absolutely have a dead set deadline on the day prior to the meeting. I mean, if you get it up at 11:50 on the Wednesday prior, I'm okay with that. But I just don't want to see that we're getting an agenda posted on Friday night, which, as you probably know, the commissioners aren't looking at an agenda on Friday or on Saturday or Sunday, and it's like Monday morning. So at the very minimum, I would expect that we have to adopt the same principles, because there's no way that we can have some of the most important items that, even if we as commissioners can have an opportunity to meet with the executive director, that puts the public at a disadvantage, and that I don't want to do. So please, let's try, and I'm sorry, let's not try, but Mr. Evans, I would much rather it come back as an addition that we know. That way there's an opportunity for the public to weigh in. But if there's something that is so urgent or so important and it can't catch the Wednesday prior to the meeting, then it be added as an addition. And then there's communication shared with the members of the board, because I was looking for this item last week, Thursday. I mean, I was looking for the agenda last week, Thursday, and it wasn't there. So at the very minimum, we need a week ahead of time, because while we aren't there full time, doesn't mean we don't have full-time commitments. And I just would hope that we can kind of be mindful of that, because we are the action decision makers of the body. And if we don't have enough time to read it, understand it, in fact, not understand it, and then go back for clarification, it doesn't really help us to get something, on a Monday, So I would offer to direct staff that going forward, a new rule is that we have these agendas published no less than 1 week in advance. And I'm not talking about the meeting notice, the agenda with the actual items that need to be deliberated on no less than a week earlier on the CRA agenda. That's my motion.
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you. Ms. Miller Anderson?
He made a motion. I would like to second that.
Oh, okay. And Ms. Miller Anderson?
That's typically what we've always done. I would assume lately it has just been a little less than that. But I think that when we decided on the other side, city side, we agreed, or I can't remember if we put it into a resolution or not, but we did say that we wanted to make sure that the agendas were posted, at 7 days. But if there were going to be anything added to it, it had to be by the Friday before the meeting. And anything after that, it would need to wait until after, because I know in our city meetings, we do add-ons in the meeting, but we kind of only traditionally stuck with community benefits. So that might be something we need to do and agree to as a whole, so that we make sure that we don't have that issue.
I think there has been a motion and a second to that effect, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yeah.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson.
Yeah.
Chair Botel.
Yes,
That motion carries.
thank you. Do we have a report of the executive
Thank
director?
you.
I'm sorry, did somebody?
No, I was just saying thank you.
I have nothing at this time, Madam Chair.
A report from general counsel?
I have nothing, Madam Chair.
Thank you. A discussion by the board, starting with Mr. Lawson.
Yes, Madam Chair. My only comments would be for Mr. Evans, the projects. We spoke briefly about the incubator project today. You did give me updates in reference to the timing and the drywall and the continued development. I did not get a chance to ask you earlier about the building at the corner of Blue Heron and Broadway, just to get an update on where we stand with that project.
We're waiting on several things. One, the city is reviewing the site plan application. So that will hopefully take place in the next month. I know that they're able to accelerate that. The other thing is we've been negotiating to get an additional parking lot, and we had a verbal agreement for the property across the street. And the property owner has since not changed his mind, but said that he wants to propose alternate terms. And so we've been calling him twice a week, every week, to try and get those back. So that is one pending item, that we would like to lease the parking lot directly across the street. There is another parking lot on 28th Street that we propose to build, and we've requested that the city put that on a future agenda item. The CRA board approved the purchase, but the city has to approve the sale. So we're waiting on a city council date for that parking lot. Those are the two main outstanding items we have on that project.
Is that it, Mr. Lawson, for you?
Yeah, Mr. Evans, if you could just give us a report or have that on the next agenda, just with an update on the status of the building. Because our goal from the minute that we came into office, some of my colleagues were here, some of us were brand new, and we wanted to kind of get some development. We wanted to address the blight here in the CRA district, and we want to see some shovels in the ground. So if we can get that report on that building next meeting, I do understand that you'll have a full report, or that you've already almost completed the incubator project, but I want to get more of those projects off the ground, because the sooner that we get that business in that building, we can actually duplicate that project and kind of continue to build that and move with that. So if we could have an update on the CRA building and the parking lots next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Evans, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Ms. Miller Anderson?
Thank you. Mr. Evans, I just had a question regarding the dairy bill. I understand that there's a dumpster there, and it's been there for quite some time, and it's being utilized by quite a few people in the neighborhood. How long do we plan on having that dumpster there? Because it's being used for food and concrete and a number of things.
The dumpster would be there until our contractors have finished the work. So that's probably about another 45 days.
So I know I pass by there quite frequently. I don't usually see anybody there. Are they working every day, or they're not working every day? Because when I pass by there, Mr. McCoy may be able to weigh a little more since he travels that way probably more frequently than I do, but I have yet to see anyone there in a long time.
Yeah, we've had plumbing, electrical, a few other trades in there, so they do, but no, they're definitely not working every day. It's on a basis when they fit it into their schedule, or they might be waiting on a different contractor to complete their work.
Why is it taking so long to do it, though? It's not that big of a building, huh?
Yeah, so we have different contractors doing on the different parts of the work. So we're sharing it amongst multiple small businesses. The cost to have one general contractor do all of the work was very absorbently high. And we figured out that if we had different subconsultants, or rather subcontractors working on the project, that we could save a lot of money for the agency. So that's part of the delay, is just that we're bidding each package. Like for an example, right now we're bidding the drywall work, so that we have multiple opportunities for different small businesses. So that's part of the delay. And then also during
So you're putting out the bid. You're putting out the bid as you go along. We haven't already secured those people to do the work, so that once one finishes up, the next group can come on in.
Yes, and we're not entirely waiting for each one to finish. In fact, we're the drywall is the one main one that we have left. But so another delay that occurred was part of the work that was done to the windows in combination with the electrical. The electrical inspector didn't like what was done, so we were put on hold for about, I want to say about 20, 30 days. While we waited for that, we had to update our permit to reflect the work that had to be done. So after we did that, then we got a new inspection. So that delayed us also.
Okay, because it just seems like that building, renovations to that building is taking a very long time. I mean, we could have built an entire home in that period of time. It doesn't take that long to do that. So I'm just concerned about the time that it's taking for that to go ahead. And then also, like I said, to make sure that they're monitoring that area in terms of, I mean, we have a lot of stuff going on in that area with that dumpster for sure. And I've received some complaints regarding that.
Okay.
And then the development down there with the, no, I'm sorry, not that. I think we were talking about Mr. Haygood, and we made a motion, correct, about Mr. Haygood checking the agenda. Did we make a motion for that, or we just directed him to make sure that he reviews all of the items on the agenda?
I think we just asked him to do that. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Haygood still here? Is he still on, Mr. Haygood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're clear, you'll be looking over all of the items regardless of whether or not they have if there's something to vote on. I mean, just so that you're clear on what it is and aware of what the items are in case we have any questions.
I will review them.
Okay. I think that's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. McCoy seems to have stepped away. Ms. Lanier?
I just wanted to say that I think, did you mention something about the Darebell building, that it was multiple tenants? I thought it was just one tenant in that building.
No,
It's just contractors. They just said we have multiple different contractors working in there.
Oh, multiple contractors. And I agree with Camilla Anderson in the sense that, I mean, this was voted on 2 years ago, actually. And it came back to us. Back in like May of last year, which means that it's been a whole year, and the building is like 400 square feet. So it just seems as if a lot of the projects that are happening, especially something that small, should have been taken care of long ago. Secondly, I think that, as I said before earlier in the conversation about looking at our development for the CRA and how we're going to frame that in the middle of a pandemic. Now, I understand that, the world, or especially the United States, is moving forward as if there is no pandemic. People are out without masks and people are moving around as if there's just nothing really going on. But because they're doing that, that is the reason why we've had a significant spike in our cases. So given that we don't see this thing going anywhere anytime soon, we're going to have to frame our redevelopment and our development around that. So I want the executive director to look at some type of information, getting information from either financial forecasters, what the economy is going to look at. There are people who do this type of stuff to bring us some information about how the economy is looking in a year, how it's going to be looking in 6 months. How does that affect us in terms of development? We need to know these things because we're going to have to plan for how we're going to move forward with our development. And we have to plan for that, knowing that we are in the middle of a pandemic. So I want to be able to, at the next meeting, to have some conversations, and it is a part of the agenda about how we are going to move forward in the middle of a pandemic with our redevelopment. You know, it's good to like I said, to acquire properties. But you know, once you acquire properties, then you know, what do you do if you can't really do anything with it? So I just really want that to come back at the next agenda for us to have some conversation about that, and also the conversation that Pro Tem Lawson brought up in terms of the environmental study. We need to be sure about what we're going to put on that property and is it safe for the residents of this city. And with that, the last thing I want to say is that the CRA is primarily focused or supposed to be focused on slum and blight in our city. And it seems that that is not really happening, that we're not focusing on the slum and the blight in the city. So there is a lot of slum and blight in the CRA district that needs attention. So we need to focus on that as well. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members, for indulging me through a little bit of technical and physical challenges. But I got a really nice card today at my office in the mail, and it reads, "The Honorable Mayor and City Council members, Councilwoman Kashama Miller Anderson, Councilman Project McCoy, and Chair Julia Botel, we would like to thank you for taking out the time of your busy schedules to come and celebrate our graduation ceremony on March 7th of 2020 at 3:00 p.m. for celebrating with us during our parade that enjoined the Riviera Beach Fire Department, Riviera Beach Police Department, and the City Council members. Thank you so much for what you've done. This graduation will always be memorable. And this came from Ariana, DeBron, and DeAsia. So I thought that was so beautiful to have them to reach out to us and tell us thank you. I don't know how I ended up in my office at my employment, but nonetheless, it goes a long way just to say thank you. And I'm really appreciative of that. And I really want to just say thank you, which I didn't see, and perhaps they didn't understand, but I want to really extend a really thank you to our city manager, Jonathan Evans, for making that possible with having our police department and also our fire personnel that was there to support us in recognizing our graduates. So thank you so much. That's all I have. And I look forward to seeing you guys in about 6 days and 22 hours at our next city council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. It was a real pleasure to celebrate with those graduates. It's always fun to honk your horn and drive around the neighborhood like that. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for including us.
Not to mention, we had another graduation too. So,
we had Thousand Oaks. It was very nice.
Right.
Yes.
I was asked by one of the principals with whom I work to make this announcement. The School District of Palm Beach County wants to hear from our parents and guardians. Please complete the Parent Guardian Survey on reopening schools by June 17th. The survey is available on palmbeachschools.org in multiple languages. Contact your child's school for more information. So I hope parents are able to, apparently it's a very lengthy survey and people might need help in completing it, but they can contact their principals for help. I have a request of Mr. Evans. I spoke at length today with Mr. Calloway and the other Mr. Evans about the possibility of doing a summer program for some of the JFK middle school kids. And it would involve using the Marina Event Center 3 days a week from 9 to 1 for the next 6 weeks, starting the week of June 29th. I'm going to raise it because it will take some funding. I'm going to raise it as part of my discussion at next week's council meeting. But I just wanted to ask if you could look at that and let us know in the next day or so whether or not we might be able to take advantage of that space for maybe 40 to 50 kids 3 days a week, including breakfast and lunch. That would be really, really helpful. And I think that's all for me. Anything else? If I missed anything? My cat is sitting on my agenda, so I have to.
Your question is asking.
No, that's it.
Your question, excuse me, can I ask the question? if you don't mind.
No, that's it. That is it.
Go right ahead, Mr. McCoy. I haven't called the meeting. I
Go
haven't
ahead,
adjourned
Mr.
the
McCoy.
meeting.
I'm only joking, man. Don't look like that.
I haven't adjourned the meeting yet.
I'm only asking because I'm not sure if I understood what you were asking and who you were asking it for.
I'm asking if Mr. Evans, before I do anything else with regard to planning for this summer program, you know, we need a space to do it. And I wanted Mr. Evans to take a look at, whether or not the Marina Event Center might be available for use for a summer program for kids Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 to 1 p.m. And I was going to raise that. Sorry.
What day is this starting?
Hopefully the 29th of June. We're going to have to, I'm going to raise it next week at city council meeting under my discussion. Yes.
When is this ending?
When school goes back on August 10th.
I'm just going to really tell you, I'm going to tell you as a member of the commission, I'm going to respectfully disagree because there were events that were canceled and the events, one of which I co-sponsored, and we were explained that they weren't going back to full operations till the 1st. And I don't think that we're going to now try to open up days ahead of time to accommodate a special group, right? When there's a number of reservations that's being held outside of. And I think this is a conversation that perhaps that needs to be asked outside of the meeting, because I had a conversation with the Marina Event Center director, and I don't want to put Mr. Evans in a situation of committing anything or even giving you the conversation or the explanation of I'll look into it. But I do not want to start this where we decide that we're going to give preference to an organization that is some kind of way just decided to start an event when we've had folks hanging in the hopper who's had to really push back events. So let me tell you something. We make money at the Marina Event Center. That's what we do. It's not a nonprofit organization. And I'm telling you, I've heard a number of people call me time and time again about how they were not able to do their events because of the city being closed through no fault of their own. And I don't want to start the conversation in the CRA meeting to give preference to an organization that has just brought something to us when there's other organizations or there's other weddings that have occurred or other events that have now had to be delayed. So I would ask that that's something that's taken outside of the city CRA meeting, because I think it would be unfair, and I certainly don't want to commit our executive director to doing explanation as to the possibility of that. And especially,
I'll take your advice. I'll take your advice and discuss it with Mr. Evans outside the meeting. Ms. Miller Anderson.
Well, I did have a question in you asking him, is there funds involved in your asking, or are you just asking, is it the room available?
I'm only asking him if the room is available. And I probably should have taken it offline, but I wanted to, since I had him right here, I thought I would ask. But I'll need to raise it at the council meeting next week.
But when you raise it at the council meeting, how does that involve us though? What are you looking to do that's going to cause us to need to be involved?
It will involve some money.
Well, I'm gonna tell you,
this is not, yeah, I shouldn't have raised it, and I apologize.
If somebody had to put off their wedding until we got back to being open, I think at the very least, we've held a deposit for several months, and in some cases a year. That gets first right of being able to reschedule. Sure. And I don't want us to get in a situation where we're giving more preference to somebody that just decided to do a summer program compared to somebody that was on our calendar that through no fault of their own had their event canceled.
And I apologize. I'll take it offline with Mr. Evans. Is there anything else?
Okay, but also keep in mind too that we canceled summer camps and all of that. So I know. You know, if it's something involving us, I don't see that right now because social distancing is still needed and a whole number of things, and along with the lines of what Mr. McCoy is talking about. So that might be something, if there's funds involved, you might want to run that through your community benefits or something that doesn't involve the board per se, because I don't see that. I don't see that right now.
You know, Madam, well, Councilwoman Miller Anderson, it was so bad, right? I had a bride reach out to me and ask her if I was available as a groom because they had to cancel their wedding. So, you know, it's that bad. No, seriously though, but I don't want to. I don't want to make this kind of decision.
This was not an outside. This was not an outside agency. This was something, but I will take it offline with Mr. Evans. Is there anything else before we adjourn? Thank you. We'll call this meeting to adjourn. Thank you. Have a good evening.